Hello everybody. We're trickling in a little bit. Gaming people, you might not be aware of my Homeless podcast. You should go check it out. It's good, I promise. I can't hear myself at all. There we go. I need to loop my voice output back through the headset, but I'm a lazy boy and I will not do that right now. Hello everybody. Okay. So I think we have sufficiently confusing signals going about my intentions here. The joke being that Hitler tried hard and we should emulate his determination. Don't let people tell you that your values are wrong. Hitler's what happens if everyone takes kindergarten values seriously. It's like, well, all these people are telling me I shouldn't do this, but I know it's right. Therefore, we're gonna gas the Jews. Which is bad. All the time. There's never any exception to that. Genocide's bad. Shouldn't do it. Okay. So that's the joke, guys. Isn't that funny? That's why we're playing Germany.
Bereit zum Ausrücken.
Boy, I haven't played this in a very long time.
Ihre Befehle?
There we go. Taking me a minute to remember the controls.
Befehle? Zuhören! Zuhören! Ihre Befehle? Bereit? Bereit zum Ausrücken.
Alright, no need for Alpines. Get rid of them. There we go. Oh, it's been a minute since I played this.
Befehle? Befehle?
We're not going to be doing a cavalry Germany. Rid of the horses.
Befehle! Angetreten?
Horses are for logistics.
Ihre Befehle? Befehle?
Ooh, did they update that? That didn't used to work that way. I don't think you used to be able to... Man, that must be new. I like that.
Zuhören!
It's been a while, guys. Making Germany great again. Now you may recall that in the actual World War II, Germany ran into some trouble towards the end. So the goal here is to not commit suicide in a bunker. That is the goal. Beyond that, I know. Just some light conquest. Nothing crazy. Just the conquest I can get away with. So the idea here is to play through the era with Hitler not being remembered as a bad person. That's the goal. I mean, he will be until... So like 100 years from when he dies, he'll be considered like a Napoleon figure. That's the goal with this playthrough. Because boy, did Napoleon kill a lot of fellas, huh? But we don't remember him as a mass murderer. Well, I think the Brits probably do, but aside from the British, the Germans, and... Okay, outside of Europe, Napoleon's cool. I'm honestly not sure about his... I know in France he's still considered a hero, but I'm assuming outside of France, people are a bit sour about him. But he did have some really good effects as far as the liberalization of Europe as a whole. If you look at his social effects, because people look at him as a military guy, but the military part of the Napoleonic the military part of the Napoleonic era was the least important, really. If you look at before Napoleon and after Napoleon, it's a different world. I mean, the fact that the borders of France weren't what they were at his height, that's not the important thing, because he was a European figure, not a French figure, more than anything. So that's the goal for Hitler. He's going to be a European figure of some controversy in 100 years. Not in real life, in this playthrough. Let me make this very clear, moderators. I am no Hitlerian. I promise. He made several mistakes. A couple of them were moral. Okay, let's... Tank forces humming along. Okay, so Germany has extremely limited resources at this period, so you can't build like if you're in the United States or even the UK, you can just kind of build everything. For Germany, you have to be very, very careful with your resources because there's just not much. I mean, Germany has essentially no oil. There's a couple of oil fields here and there. There's some in Austria as well, but in Europe, the oil fields are mostly over here, and then up here. The ones up here hadn't been developed at this time period, though. So it's really Romania, and then the Caucasus. The entire point of Operation Barbarossa in history wasn't to go after Moscow. Moscow, Leningrad, and Stalingrad were enormous mistakes forced upon the Reich by the German High Command. Even Hitler had intended to go for the Caucasus. Because if you take the Caucasus, the Soviet Union falls in this time period, because that's where all their oil is. I mean, not all of it, but sufficient that without it, the war's over. So, really the alliance with Finland wasn't a great idea. They should have just been an all-out assault across Ukraine into the Caucasus and ignore everything else. Just basically fortify the borders of the Reich at the time, which were, here. So, fortify a line along here. I guess, no, actually, Soviet Union had taken Poland, so it'd be really establish a defensive, an Eastern Wall kind of situation, but like a real one, here, and then jump off through Romania and focus everything in this part of the Soviet Union. Everything else is a distraction and irrelevant. All the forces that were sent to Moscow and to Leningrad were, or St. Petersburg, whichever one, it was Leningrad at the time, St. Petersburg now, and before it was called Leningrad, so this city here, whatever you want to call it, doesn't matter. The only reason that the Germans and the Axis forces went after it was because of the alliance with Finland. And as cool as Finland is, and as badass as the Winter War was, that's not the deciding factor. I mean, that's just not a decisive theater at all. It's just, there's not much going on in Finland as far as strategic value. If you're not Finnish. If you're Finnish, different story. But if you're German, leave the Finns out of it. Let the Finns take, everything they want to take once the Soviet Union's been disintegrated by losing the Caucasus. It was really Adolf really thought who the hell he was at that point. He did not think that the Soviets could stand up to him. And the Soviets, even going into Barbarossa, had a tremendous numerical advantage across pretty much every metric. Quality, different story. They had just gone through a leadership purge, but yeah, arrogance, it'll get you every time. Ironically, Hitler's downfall was chutzpah. For the three of you that know, that's funny. Anyway, back to this. Let's probably get something going on in the background here. Otherwise, I'll just chatter and not do anything. Don't think. Alright, Seneca, you're up.
On the Shortness of
Never
Life
heard this before.
by Lucius Annaeus Seneca, translated by Gareth D. Williams. Most of mankind, godliness, complains about nature's meanness, because our allotted span of time is so short, and because this stretch of time that is given to us runs its course so quickly, so rapidly.
I think
So
Stoic
much so
philosophy
that,
is
with
appropriate
very
for
few
this game,
exceptions,
isn't it?
life leaves the
Kinda
rest of us in
rhymes.
the lurch just when we're getting ready to live.
I
And
like
it's not just the
Discord and
masses
stuff,
the
but I don't
unthinking
think people
crowd
like that
that
when they're
complain at
watching a
what they
stream.
perceive as this universal evil. The same feeling draws complaints even from men of distinction.
Maybe I'm wrong. Tell me.
Hence that famous dictum of the greatest of physicians: life is short, art long. Hence also Aristotle's grievance, most unbecoming a philosopher.
So a lot of Christians are
when
going
he
to hear a
called
great
nature to
physician
account
and
for
think
bestowing
Jesus.
so much
That's not who
time
he's
on
talking
animals
about.
that they can live for 5 or 10 human
I think.
lifespans, while so much shorter a time is set for humans, even though they are born to do many great things. It's not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it. Life is long enough, and it's been given to us in generous measure for accomplishing the greatest things, if the whole of it is well invested. But when life is squandered through soft and careless living, and when it's spent on no worthwhile pursuit, death finally presses, and we realise the life which we didn't notice passing has passed away. So it is. The life we are given isn't short, but we make it so. We're not ill-provided, but we are wasteful of life. Just as impressive and princely wealth is squandered in an instant when it passes into the hands of a poor manager, but wealth, however modest, grows through careful deployment if it is entrusted to a responsible guardian. Just so our lifetime offers ample scope to the person who maps it out well. Chapter 2. Why do we complain about nature? It has acted generously. Life, if you know how to use it, is long. But one person's held in the grip of voracious avarice, another by the kind of diligence that busies itself with pointless enterprises.
That one.
This one's sodden with wine,
Think about
another
that
slack
one.
with idleness. This one's tied out by his
Busy
political
with
ambition,
pointless
which always hangs on the judgment of
enterprise.
others, while another's passionate desire for trading drives him headlong over every land and every sea in hope for profit. A passion for soldiering torments some men, who are always either bent on inflicting dangers on others or worried about danger to themselves. Some are worn down by the voluntary enslavement of thankless attendance on the great. Many are kept busy either striving for other people's wealth or complaining about their own. Many who have no consistent goal in life are thrown from one new design to another by a fickleness that is shifting, never settled, and
We're
ever
not going to be
dissatisfied with
building
itself.
a German fleet at
Some
all.
have no goal at all towards which to
Germany
steer
is
their
a
course,
land power.
but death takes them by surprise as they gape and yawn.
Boats are where Germans
I
go to
cannot
die.
therefore doubt the truth of that seemingly oracular utterance of the greatest of poets. Scant is the part of life in which we live. All the rest of existence is not living.
Substitute.
Vices assail and surround us on all sides, and they don't allow us to rise again and lift our voice and feel the same.
Control the
But they
sea
press down on them,
from the air.
keeping them lowered and fixed on mere desire.
We're going to
It's
ignore
never possible
backyards.
for their victims to return to their true
Maybe do a
selves.
submarine fleet.
If by chance they ever find some respite, they still roll restlessly, just like the
As
deep
long
sea,
as they don't
which
take
still
anything but
swells even after the
steel,
winter's
maybe.
settled. They never find full relaxation from
Plenty
their
of steel.
desires. You think I'm talking only of those whose faults are admitted?
Okay.
Look at those whose prosperity draws
May as
crowds.
well. Let's. I mean,
They are choked by their own goods.
I think
How
that'd be worth
many
it.
have
Anything
found
bigger than a
wealth a
submarine's
burden?
not going to make much sense.
How many are drained of their blood by their eloquence and their daily preoccupations with showing off their abilities? How many are sick and
Shots
pale
fired.
from their incessant pleasures? How many are left
Shots
with no
fired.
freedom from their multitude of besieging powers? In short, look over all of them from lowest to highest. This person summons counsel to plead his case. Another answers the call. This one stands trial. Another acts for the defence. Another presides as judge. No one acts as his own champion, but each is wasted for another's
I do.
sake. Ask about those influential citizens whose names are studiously memorized, and you'll see that the following distinctions tell them apart. The first cultivates a second, the second a third. No one is his
I like
own
how he
man.
thinks.
Again, certain people give vent to the most irrational outbursts of anger. They complain about the haughtiness of their superiors, because the latter were too busy to receive them when they wanted an audience. Dare anyone complain about another's arrogance when he himself never has time to spare for himself? Yet the great man has occasionally, albeit with a disdainful expression, condescended to look on you, whoever you are. He has deigned to listen to your words. He has allowed you to walk at his side. But you never thought fit to look on yourself or to listen to yourself.
Oof.
And so you've no reason to expect a return from anyone for those attentions of yours, since you offered them not because you wanted another's company, but because you were incapable of communing with yourself. Chapter 3. Though all the brilliant minds that have shone over the ages agree on this one point, they could never adequately express their astonishment at this dark fog in the human mind. No one lets anyone seize his estates, and if a trivial dispute
Ooh.
arises about boundary lines, there's a rush to stones and
I
arms.
didn't start
But
it.
people let others
So
trespass
if we're-
on their
if we're
existence, or rather,
abrogating
they go
treaties-
so far as to invite in those who will take possession of their lives.
I didn't
You'll
start
find
it.
no one willing to distribute his money, but how many people each of us shares out his life? Men are thrifty in guarding their private property, but as soon as it comes to wasting time, they are most extravagant for the one commodity for which it is respectable to be greedy. And so I'd like to collar one of the older crowd. I see that you've reached the limit of human life. You're pressing hard on your 100th year or more. Come now, submit your life to an audit. Calculate how much of your time
100
has been taken up
years?
by a moneylender, how much by a mistress, how much by a patron, how much by a client, how much in arguing with your wife, in punishing your slaves, in running about the city on social duties. Add to your calculations the illness that you've inflicted on ourselves, and also the time that is lain idle. You'll see that you've fewer
Autarky.
years than you count. Look
They're
back
actually
and
not
recall when
rely
you were
on that
ever
which it
sure
does
of
not
your
have.
purpose. How few days turned out as you'd intended, when you were ever at your own disposal, when your face showed its own expression, when your mind was free from disturbance. What accomplishment you can claim in such a long life. How many have plundered your existence
how to
without
learn.
your being aware of what you were losing? How much time has been lost to groundless anguish, foolish pleasure,
we're
greedy
not
desire,
going to
the
lie to
charms of
anybody.
society? How little is left to you from your own store of time?
Ironman
You'll
mode.
come to realize that you're dying before your time.
I think it says that somewhere probably, right?
What, then, is the reason for this? Your sort live as if you're going to live
Yeah, so-
forever. Your own human frailty never enters your head. You don't keep an eye on how much time has passed already. You waste time as if it comes from a source full to overflowing, when all the while that very day which is given over to someone or something may be your last. You're like ordinary mortals in fearing everything. You're like
Not even gonna
immortals
crack down on
in
people.
coveting everything.
We're
You'll
going
hear
to
many
roll so
say,
well.
after my 50th year,
That is
I'll
undeniable.
retire to a life of leisure. My 60th year
There's
will
not
bring
gonna
me
be a
release
single
from all my
rebellion.
duties. And what guarantee, may I ask, do you have that your life will last longer? Who will allow those arrangements of yours to proceed according to plan? Are you not ashamed to keep for yourself only the remnants of your existence, and to allocate to philosophical thought only that portion of time which can't be applied to any business? How late is it to begin living just when life must come to an end? What foolish obliviousness to our mortality to put off wise plans to our 50th and 60th year, and to want to begin life from a point that few have reached. Chapter 4. You'll find that the most powerful men of high position put words in which they pray for leisure, praise it, and prefer it to all their blessings. They sometimes long to step down from that pinnacle of theirs,
True
if they can safely do
story.
so. For even without
Wouldn't
any
Biden
external
like to just
disturbance
not
or
be
shock,
president right now?
fortune crashes down on itself under
People
its own
want to be
weight.
elected president. They don't want to.
The divine
be
Augustus,
president.
to whom the gods gave more than to any man,
No, they
never
just do what
ceased
they
to pray
want.
for rest for himself and to seek release from the affairs of state. Every conversation of his kept coming back to this theme that he was hoping for leisure. He would relieve his toils with this sweet, even if illusory, consolation, the thought that one day he would live for himself.
Ihre Befehle?
In a letter he sent to the Senate, when he had given an assurance that his retirement would not be wanting in dignity and not be inconsistent with his former prestige, I found the following words.
Oops.
But such things are more impressive in their fulfillment than in their promise. Yet my deep desire for that time, which I have long prayed for, has led me to anticipate something of its delight by the pleasure of words, since the joy of that reality is still slow in coming. Leisure seems such a desirable thing, that because he couldn't
Elect
enjoy it in
someone that
reality,
wishes you
he enjoyed the
wouldn't.
thought of it in advance. He who saw that the world depended on him and him alone, who determined the fortunes of individuals and nations, he was happiest in looking forward to that day on which he would lay aside his greatness. He knew by experience how much sweat was wrung from him by those blessings that gleamed the world over. He knew the scale of the hidden anxieties they veiled.
Now that was a
Forced to
mistake.
contend in arms with his fellow citizens,
Remember that
then
time
with his
when Hitler
colleagues,
put
and
someone in
finally
charge
with
of
his
Abwehr
relatives,
who
he
didn't
shed
like him?
blood by land and sea.
Whoops.
Driven by war through Macedonia,
Don't do that.
Sicily, Egypt, Syria, and Asia, and almost every known land.
Gotta make sure your
He
spy
turned his
master
armies
likes
to
you.
foreign wars when they were weary of slaughtering Romans. While he was pacifying the Alps and subjugating enemies
The dangers of
embedded in
having
the
an
heart of the
autistic guy
peaceful
leading the
empire,
country.
and while he was extending its boundaries beyond the Rhine and Euphrates and Danube, in the city of Rome itself, Murena, Capio, Lepidus, Ignatius, and others were whetting their swords against him. He had not yet
It's
escaped their
H-E-T-T,
intrigues when his
not
daughter and so many noble
W-T.
paramours, bound by adultery,
Befehle!
as if by an oath of allegiance, kept causing him alarm in his now failing years, as did Polus and a woman once again posing a threat with her Antony. He had cut away these sores, limbs and all, but others kept growing up in their place. As if overburdened with blood, the body politic was always hemorrhaging somewhere. That is why Augustus prayed for leisure, and why he found relief from his labours in hoping for it and thinking of it. This was the prayer of a man who could grant the prayers of other men. Chapter 5. Marcus Crassus was storm-tossed among the likes of Catiline and Clodius, of Pompey and Crassus, declared enemies on the one side, doubtful friends on the other. He was buffeted along with his ship of state, which he tried to keep steady as it was going down, but he was finally
Right.
swept away.
So Spain just
He was
kicked
neither
off
at
the
ease
Civil
in
War.
prosperity, nor capable
This
of
is
withstanding
historical.
adversity. How many times
Nationalists
did he
versus the
curse that very
libs.
consulship of his, which he had extolled,
Spoilers,
not without
nationalists
reason,
won.
but without
Stayed in
ceasing?
power until the 70s, I think.
How
Brinker.
pitiful are the words that he wrings from himself in a letter
We will
written
not
to
be
Atticus,
participating, however.
when the elder Pompey had been defeated
That
and his son
is,
was still trying to revive
the
his
Reich
shattered
does not
forces in Spain.
Care about the internal affairs of other
You
countries.
ask, he says,
Promise.
what am I doing here? I'm lingering in my Tusculan estate, half free.
Okay,
After
Italians
that, he
got
goes on to other
Ethiopia to
statements in
capitulate.
which he bemoans his former life, complains
not my
about the
problem.
present, and despairs of the future. Half free, Cicero said of himself. But needless to say, the sage will never resort to such an abject term. He will never be half free, but will always enjoy complete and unalloyed liberty. Not subject to any constraints, he will be his own master and tower above all others. For what can there be above a man who rises above fortune? Chapter 6.
Interesting.
Livius Drusus was a vigorously energetic man who, thronged about by a huge crowd from the whole of Italy, had agitated for radical legislation and provoked the kind of troubles the Gracchi had. But he could see no clear way out for his policies, which he was unable to carry through, and which,
Talk about a
once
populist.
started, it was no longer an
This
option
is the
to
Trump
abandon.
figure.
He's said to have cursed the life of constant activity that he had led from its very beginnings, saying that he was the only person who had never had a holiday, even as a boy. While he was still a ward and had yet to assume the adult toga, he ventured to plead before juries on behalf of defendants and to exert his special influence in the courts. To such effect, in fact, that it's generally accepted that he captured several verdicts against the odds. Where would such precocious ambition not find an outlet? You might have known that such premature presumptuousness would lead to a disaster both for him and for the state. And so it was too late when he began complaining that he'd never had a holiday, since he'd been a troublemaker and a burden to the forum from his boyhood. It is unclear whether he died by his own hand. He fell suddenly from a wound to the groin. Some doubted
Ooh.
whether his death was self-inflicted. No one that it was timely. It would be superfluous to mention more figures who, although
What,
they
some
seemed
lady
to
biting
others
his
the
dick off?
happiest
What
of
happened to
mortals,
this guy?
themselves gave true testimony against themselves when they expressed intense hatred for every act of
I wonder how many
their
times that's happened in history.
Yet by these complaints,
It's
they changed
9-0.
neither themselves nor anyone
I know
else.
that much.
For after the outburst, their feelings reverted to their normal
Okay,
state.
so this is the
In
problem.
reality, your life,
currently
even if you live 1,000
completely
years and more,
out of
will
fuel.
be compressed into the merest
I've been
span.
running a lot of
Those vices of yours
aerial
will swallow up any
exercises.
number
That's
of
what's been using my
lifetimes.
fuel.
To be
But
sure,
my Air Force
this
is not
span of
trained up pretty
time,
well.
which good management prolongs, even though it naturally hurries on, must in your case escape
So
you
knock it
quickly,
off with the exercises.
for you fail to seize it and hold it back, and you do nothing to delay the speediest of all things, but you allow it to pass as if it was something overabundant that we can get back again. Chapter 7. In fact, among the worst cases, I count also those who give their time to nothing but drink and lust, for these are the most shameful of the occupations of all. Other people, even if the semblance of glory
It's
that
not because
grips
it's
them is
shameful,
false,
though, it's
nevertheless go
because-
astray in respectable fashion.
I don't even know what to say.
You can cite for me people who are greedy,
That's,
those quick to anger, or people who busy themselves with unjust hatreds or wars. But all
What's
of
the
them
term?
sin in a more manly fashion. It is those abandoned to the
When
belly
something
and lust
is
who bear the stain
less
of
valuable,
dishonour.
the more you have of it. Diminishing returns.
Scrutinize every moment of
Achtung!
such people's lives, and note how much
Booze
time they
has
spend on their
diminishing
lead to
returns
keep.
like nothing else.
How much on setting traps or fearing them? How much on cultivating others or being cultivated by others? How much on giving or receiving bail? How much on dinner parties,
Ihre
which
Befehle?
have themselves become business? You'll see that their affairs, whether good or bad,
Achtung!
allow them no time to draw breath. To sum up, everyone agrees that no one area of activity can be successfully pursued by someone who is preoccupied. Rhetoric cannot, nor can the liberal arts, since the distracted mind takes in nothing really deeply, but rejects everything that is, so to speak, pounded into it. Nothing is less
So to
characteristic of a man
speak.
preoccupied than living. There is no knowledge that is harder to acquire. Instructors of other disciplines are two a penny. Indeed, mere boys have been seen to master some of these disciplines so thoroughly that they could even be masters in the classroom. But learning how to live takes a whole lifetime, and, you'll perhaps be more surprised at this, it takes a whole lifetime to learn how to die.
Angetreten.
So many men of the highest station have set aside all their encumbrances, renounced their wealth, their business, their pleasures, and right up to the very end of life they have made it their sole aim to know how to live. Nevertheless, the majority of them depart from life, admitting that they did not yet have such knowledge. Still less have those others attained it. Believe me, it's the mark of a great man, and one rising above human weakness, to allow no part of his time to be skimmed off. Accordingly, such a person's life is extremely long, because he's kept available
You
for
shouldn't
himself
concentrate
the whole
this
of
much
whatever
on how
amount
to
of
live
time he
either.
had. None of it lay fallow and uncultivated, and none of it is under another's control. For being a most careful guardian of his time, he found nothing worth exchanging it for.
There's no particular
And so
reason
that
to
man
be
had
building
enough
the
time,
infrastructure so
but
much.
those
just 'cause
deprived of
the
much
Soviet
of their
Union.
life by the public
Um,
have necessarily had too little.
And it's definitely not for offensive purposes.
Nor should we imagine that those people aren't
Obviously.
sometimes conscious of their loss. Certainly you'll hear many of those burdened by their great prosperity occasionally cry out amid their hordes of clients or their pleadings of cases, or their other respectable forms of wretchedness. I have no chance to live. Of course you don't. All those who engage you in their business disengage you from yourself. How many days did that defendant of yours take from you? How many that candidate? Or that old lady, wearied as she is by burying her health?
Angetreten.
Or that character who feigns illness to excite the greed of legacy hunters? Or that powerful friend who holds on to you, not for true friendship,
Cite the
but for
greed
show?
of legacy hunters.
Check off, I say, and review the days of your life. You'll see that very
Something
few
that I
of
don't
them,
understand.
and those the
That was very
worthless
cultural,
ones,
and I don't
have
understand
stayed
what's
in your
happening.
possession.
What is a legacy
The
hunter?
man who's achieved the high office he'd prayed for longs to lay it aside and repeatedly says, "When will this year end?" The man who puts on the games,
I mean, I know what
got
it
it a
sounds
great
like, but I
privilege that
assume there's something
responsibility
more.
for giving them fell to him. Now he says, "When will I be free of them?" That advocate has people competing for his attention throughout the forum. With the crowd he draws, he fills the whole place further than he can be heard. When, he says, will there be a vacation? Everyone sends his life racing headlong and suffers from a longing for the future, a loathing of the present. But the person who devotes every second of his time to his own needs, and who organises each day as if it were a complete life, neither longs for nor is afraid of the next day.
That
For
organizing
what new
your days
kind
into
of pleasure
complete
is there
life
that
is
any hour can
very
now bring?
wise.
Everything is being
Ihre
experienced,
Befehle.
everything enjoyed to the full.
I mean, it's not the most
the
efficient
rest,
thing to do, but
fortune
if you're
may
not
make
doing anything
arrangements
else,
as
that's a
it
good thing to
wishes.
do.
His life has already reached safety. Addition
Ideally,
can
you
be
should
made to
organize
his
your
life,
entire
but
life
nothing taken away
like it's
from
an
it.
entire life, and not
An
think
addition
about days
made in
at
the
all.
way
But
that a man who is already satisfied and full
can't do
takes a
that.
portion of food which he doesn't crave and yet has room for. So there's no reason to believe that someone has lived long because he has grey hair and wrinkles. He's not lived long, but long existed. For suppose you thought that a person had sailed far who had been caught in a savage storm as soon as he left harbour, and after being carried in this direction and that, was driven in circles over the same course by alternations of the winds raging from different quarters. He didn't have a long voyage, but he was long tossed about. Chapter 8. I'm always astonished when I see people requesting the time of others and receiving a most accommodating response from those they approach. Both sides focus on the object of the request, and neither side on the time itself. It is requested as if it were nothing, granted as if it were nothing. People trifle with the most precocious commodity of all, and it escapes their notice because it's an immaterial thing that doesn't appear to the eyes, and for that reason it's valued very cheaply, or rather, it practically has no value at all. People set very great store by annuities and gratuities, and for these they hire out their services or their efforts or their ascensions.
Why aren't you?
But no one values time. All use it more than lavishly, as if it cost nothing. But if mortal danger threatens them, you'll see the same people clasping their doctor's knees. If they fear a capital charge, you'll see them ready to spend all they have to stay alive. So great is the conflict in their feelings. But if each of us could see the number of years before us, as precisely as the years that have passed, how alarmed would be those who saw only a few years left, and how carefully would they use them? And yet it's easy to manage an amount, however small, which is clearly defined. We have to be more careful in conserving an amount that may give out at any time. Yet there's no reason to believe that those people are unaware of how precious a commodity time is. They habitually say to those they love most intensely that they are ready to give them some of their own years. And they do give them without knowing it. But they give in such a way that, without adding to the years of their loved ones, they subtract from themselves. But this very point, namely whether they are depriving themselves, eludes them, and so they can bear the loss of and the losing. No one will bring back the years, no one will restore you to your former self. Life will follow the path from which it began, and it will neither reverse nor halt its course. It will cause no commotion at all, it will call no attention to its own swiftness. It will glide on in silence, it will prolong itself at neither a king's commands nor his people's clamour. It will run on just as it started out on the first day, with no diversions and no delays. And the outcome? You've been preoccupied while life hurries on, death looms all along, and like it or not, you have to accommodate it. Chapter 9. Can there be anything sillier than those people who boast of their foresight?
Sillier?
They are too busily preoccupied with efforts to live better, they plan out their lives at the expense of life itself. They form their purpose with a distant future in mind, yet the greatest
we're not attacking.
postponement.
There's no
It
war.
robs us
We're
of each
just
day in turn and
deploying
snatches
our
away the
forces on the
present by
borders.
promising the future. The greatest impediment to living is expectancy, which relies on tomorrow and wastes today. So map out what is in fortune's hand, but let slip what's in your own hand. What are you aiming at? What's your goal? All that's to come lies in uncertainty. Live right now. Hear the cry of the greatest of poets, who sings his salutary song as if inspired with divine utterance. Each finest day of life for wretched mortals is ever the first to flee. Why are you holding back, he says? Why are you slow to action? If you don't seize the day, it slips away. Even when you've seized it, it will still slip away, and you must compete with time's quickness in the speed with which you use it, and you must drink swiftly, as if from a fast-moving torrent that will not always flow.
I love fast.
This too the poet very aptly says in chastising interminable procrastination. Not each best age, but each best day. Carefree and unconcerned, even though time flies so quickly, why do you project for yourself months and years in long sequence, to whatever extent your greed sees fit? The poet is speaking to you about the day, about this very day which is slipping away. So can there be any doubt that each finest day is ever the first to flee for wretched mortals, that is, the preoccupied? Old age takes their childish minds unawares, and they meet it unprepared and unarmed, for they've made no provision for it. Suddenly, unsuspecting, they've stumbled upon it, without noticing that it was drawing nearer every day. Just as conversation or reading or some deep reflection beguiles travellers, and they find that they've reached their destination before being aware of approaching it.
I'll be able to do that in a
So with
second
the
here.
ceaseless and extremely rapid journey of life, which we make at the same pace, whether awake or sleeping, the preoccupied become aware of it only at its end. Chapter 10. If I wanted to divide my subject into categories, each with its proofs, I could come up with many arguments to demonstrate that the life of the preoccupied is very short. But Fabianus, who was not one of today's chair-holding professionals, but a true philosopher of the old-fashioned sort, was in the habit of saying that we must battle against the passions with a vigorous attack, not with nicety of argument. The enemy line is to be turned by a full frontal assault, not by tiny pinpricks. He has no regard for mere quibbling, for vices are to be crushed, not merely nipped at. Nevertheless, for the preoccupied to be censured for their distinctive failing, they are to be taught a lesson, not simply given up for lost. Life is divided into three parts: past, present, and future. Of these parts, the present is brief, the future doubtful, the past certain. For this last is the category over which fortune no longer has control, and which cannot be brought back under anyone's power. Preoccupied people lose this part, for they have no leisure to look back at the past, and even if they had it,
Also
there's no
historical.
pleasure in recalling something regrettable.
So
And
they're
they're
actual
unwilling to turn their
anarchists.
minds back to times badly spent, and they dare not revisit the past because
Still
their
the
vices
dumbest
become
area of
obvious
Spain.
in retrospect.
Beautiful.
Even those
but
that insinuated themselves by the allurement of momentary pleasure. No one gladly casts his mind back to the past, except for the person whose every action has been subjected to his own self-assessment, which is infallible. A man who's been ambitious in the scale of his desires, arrogant in his disdainfulness, unrestrained in prevailing over others, treacherous in his deceptions, greedy for his plunderings, and lavish in his prodigality. Such a man must inevitably be afraid of his own memory. Yet this part of our existence that is consecrated and set apart, elevated above all human vicissitudes and removed beyond fortune's sway, and harried by no poverty, no fear, no attacks of disease, this part can be neither disrupted nor stolen away. Our possession of it is everlasting and untroubled.
So we're going to increase the amount of
Days are
artillery
present only
and
at a time,
anti-tank in
and
each of
these
our
only minute
divisions.
by minute.
The idea
But all
here
the days
is
of the
I'm
past
trying
will
to get
attend
like
you
a
at your
very
bidding,
super
and they
heavy
will allow you to examine them and hold on to
infantry
them at your
division
will.
that is focused on
Something which preoccupied
defensive,
people have no time to do.
just
It
basically
takes a
defensive
tranquil and
tactics.
untroubled mind to
They're
roam
not going to
freely over
be
all parts of life.
charging through the
But
Soviet Union.
preoccupied minds,
They're
as if
supposed to
under
be
the yoke,
holding a
cannot turn
line
around
fairly
and look
cheaply.
Their
That's
life,
just heavy
therefore,
infantry,
disappears into an abyss.
while any kind of striking is
And
done
just
by
as it
armored
does no good to
forces.
pour any amount
That's
of
the
liquid
idea, at
into
least.
a vessel if there's nothing at the bottom
That's
to
why I've
receive it.
designed them to be
So
so
it makes no
heavy.
difference how much time we are given if there's nowhere for it to settle.
Supposed to
and it's
just
allowed
settle
to
in
pass
behind a
through the
defensive
cracks and
line and
holes in
just
the mud.
chill while the panzers go
The
do
present
panzer
time is
things.
very brief, indeed so very brief that to some people it seems to be non-existent. For it's always in motion, slipping by and hurrying on. It
Angetreten.
ceases to be before it
keep
arrives,
running
and
out
it
of
no
oil.
more suffers delay than do the firmament or the heavenly bodies, whose ever tireless movement never lets them remain in the same position. So the preoccupied are concerned with the present alone, and it is so fleeting that it can't be grasped, and even that little amount is stolen away from them because they're pulled in so many different directions. Chapter 11. In a word, do you want to know how briefly they really live? See how keen they are to live a long life. Enfeebled old men beg in their prayers for an additional few years. They pretend they are younger than they really are. They flatter themselves by this falsehood, and deceive themselves as gladly as if they deceive fate at the same time. But when some real illness has at last reminded them that they are mortal, how terrified they are when they die. As if they're not leaving life, but being dragged from it. They cry out repeatedly that they've been fools because they've not really lived, and that they'll live in leisure if only they can escape their
Angetreten.
illness. Then they reflect on how uselessly they've made provision for things
Ihre
they didn't
Befehle.
live to
I wonder how
enjoy,
common that
and
is.
how fruitless was all their toil. But why should life not be ample for those who spend it far removed from all business? None of it is made
There
over
we
to
go.
another, none scattered in this direction or that, none of it is entrusted to fortune, none wasted through neglect, none is lost through being given away freely, none is superfluous. The whole of life yields a return, so to speak. And so, however short, it is amply sufficient, and for that reason, whenever his last day comes, the sage will not hesitate to go to his death with a sure step.
That's appropriate.
Ihre Befehle? Achtung!
copyright me, bro. This is such for yours. Willingly joining. I think that actually stopped pushing not. That was a Gerbil's thing. So the name of the song is Rise of Evil, guys. Let's not make any mistakes here. No lies.
Who will be lost
musical interlude there. Back to Seneca.
Chapter 12. You perhaps want to know whom I'd term the preoccupied. Don't imagine I mean only those lawyers who are driven out of the law court only when the watchdogs are finally let in for the night. Or those patrons you see crushed, either with impressive display in their own crowd of admirers, or more contemptuously in someone else's crowd. Or those clients whose duties summon them from their own houses in order to dash them against the doors of others. Or those the praetor's spear keeps busy for disreputable gain, which is someday bound to fester. Even the leisure of some people is preoccupied. In their country retreat or on their couch, in the midst of their solitude, and even when they've withdrawn from everyone, they are troubling company for themselves. Their existence is to be termed not leisurely, but one of idle preoccupation.
Anxiety.
You call a man at leisure who arranges with meticulous attention to detail his Corinthian bronzes, which are made so expensive by their collecting mania of a few, and who spends most of the day on rusty strips of copper. Or a man who sits at a wrestling ring, for shame on us, we suffer from vices that are not even Roman, enthusiastically watching boys brawling, who separates the troops of his own well-oiled wrestlers into pairs of the same age and skin colour, who maintains a stable of the freshest athletes. Tell me, do you call those people leisured who spend many hours at the barber's while any overnight growth is trimmed away? Solemn consultation is taken over each separate hair, and disheveled locks are rearranged, or thinning hair is combed forward from both sides to cover the
How very
forehead.
wise of you, Lithuania.
How angry they get if the barber has been a little too careless, as if he were cutting a real man's hair. How they flare up if anything is wrongly cut off their precious mane, if a hair lies out of place, or if everything doesn't fall back into
This is
its
very
proper ring.
artistic.
Which of those people wouldn't rather have their country thrown into disarray than their hair? Who isn't more concerned about keeping his head neat rather than safe? Who wouldn't rather be well groomed than well respected? You call leisured these people who are kept busy between the comb and the mirror? What about those who are absorbed in composing, listening to and learning songs? The voice, whose best and simplest flow is naturally straightforward, they twist into sinuous tones of the most feeble crooning. Their fingers are always snapping in time to some song they carry in their head, and when they've been asked to attend to serious and often even sorrowful matters, you can overhear them quietly humming a tune. Theirs is
Hey.
leisure, but idle
Hey,
occupation.
Seneca, hey.
And heaven knows, I'd not classify their banquets among leisurely pastimes, because I see how anxiously they arrange their silver plate, how carefully they gather up the
going
tunics
right,
of their
going
pretty boys at table, how they are on tenterhooks to see how the boar turns
Okay,
out
so
from
this
the
guy,
cook.
he's just calling people gay
How
right
quickly
now.
the smooth-skinned slaves hurry to discharge their duties at the given signal, how skillfully birds are carved into carefully shaped portions, and how attentively wretched little slave boys wipe away the spittle of drunks.
Ooh.
By these means they seek a reputation for refinement and sumptuous living, and their evils follow them into every corner of their lives to such an extent that they cannot eat or drink without ostentation. Nor would I count among the leisured those that have
Horses.
themselves carried around in a sedan chair and litter, and who arrive precisely on time for their rides, as if they were forbidden to skip them, and who have to be reminded of their scheduled time for bathing, for swimming, or for dining.
We need to
They
find
are
a
so
solution to the
enervated by the excessive sloth of a
Czechoslovakia
pampered
question.
mind that they can't tell by themselves if they are hungry. I hear one of these pampered creatures, if pampered is the right word for unlearning life and normal human practice,
Last
was
man, what
manually
Nietzsche would
lifted out
say
of
here.
the bath and set down
That's
in
what
a
he's
sedan
describing.
chair and asked, "Am I now seated?" Do you think that someone like this, who doesn't know if he is sitting, knows whether he's alive, whether he can see, whether he's at leisure? It's hard for me to say whether I pity him more if he really didn't know as much, or if he pretended not to know. They are oblivious to many things, but they also affect forgetfulness of much. They find certain vices pleasing as evidence of their prosperity. To know what you're doing seems to be the mark of a man who's lowly and contemptible. What folly to think that mime actors feign many details in order to
And
attack
use light
public.
tanks.
Truth be told, they pass over more than they
I
fabricate.
think.
And such a wealth of unbelievable vices has
For
arisen
our
in
support
an age that
units.
has applied its fertile talents in
Or
its
not
own
support units, for
direction.
our
By
cavalry
now we can
scouts,
charge the
for our
mime actors
infantry
with ignoring
divisions.
To imagine that there's anyone so ruined by pampering that he takes another's word
Reason
as to
being
whether
that
he's
now
seated.
every division has at least
So here is
some
not a person of
integrated
leisure.
armor,
You should
just in
apply
case it's an
different terms
emergency.
He is sick, or rather as good as dead. The truly leisured person is one who is also conscious of his own leisure.
It's appropriate for
But a person who
heavy
needs a guide to make him aware of his
infantry
own bodily
division.
positions is
Does
only
some
half
integrated
alive.
armored cavalry,
How can he be in control of any of his time?
but not much, like just enough to, poke your
Chapter
head out
13.
from behind the fortifications.
It would be a long business to run through the individual cases of people who've spent their whole lives playing checkers or playing bowl or baking their bodies in the sun.
Hey.
People whose pleasures put them to considerable work are not at leisure. For instance, nobody will doubt that those who devote their time to useless literary questions, Rome too now has a significant number of such people, are busily engaged in doing nothing. It was
That's
once
not
the
true.
well-known failing
I
of the
don't think
Greeks
I'm.
to ask how
I
many
think I like
words
Seneca, but I
Ulysses
don't
had,
agree with him on
whether
almost
the
anything.
Iliad or the Odyssey was written first,
Or
and
anything
also whether they
controversial.
belong to the same author, and
I
other
like him,
questions
though.
of the same stamp, which, if you keep them to yourself, do nothing to improve your private knowledge, and if you divulge them, you're made to appear not more learned,
Come
but
on,
more
fold.
annoying. Now this vacuous enthusiasm for acquiring useless knowledge has infected the Romans as well. Only a few days ago I heard someone mentioning which Roman general had been first to do what. Julius was the first to win a battle at sea.
Trivia.
Curius Dentatus the first to parade elephants in a trial. So far, even if such items as these hardly steer us towards glory, they still involve models of service to the state.
Thank you.
Such knowledge isn't going to profit us, but it's nevertheless of the sort to hold our interest because its subject matter, though empty, is appealing. You may also excuse investigators who ask who first persuaded the Romans to deploy a navy.
I'm going to check everyone
It
and,
was Claudius.
you
It
know,
was called Codex for this reason.
demand the
Because
rest.
the ancients termed the composite structure of several
That also
planets
happened in real
codex.
life. So far, I'm
Hence, the
doing
public
exactly what Hitler
records are
did.
called codices, and the barges
I
which
mean,
carry
you know,
provisions up the Tiber
on a
are
broad
still called codicarii in accordance
geopolitical
with ancient
sense.
practice.
We
Doubtless
occupied the
also,
Rhineland,
this may
took
have
Sudetan
some
land,
relevance. The fact that
Angelus.
Valerius Corvinus was the
Grab the
first to
memo.
conquer Messana, and was the first of the
I'd
family
like
of Valerii to be called Messana after
to get
appropriating
Danzig
the
with
name
that
of the
war.
captured city.
Or,
Common usage
alternatively,
gradually changed the lesson,
somehow get into a
so
war
he
with
became
Poland without triggering
Messala.
UK and France.
But will you also allow interest in the fact that El Sala was the first to display lions off the leash in the circus? There was a general rule they were shown in chains, and that javelin throwers were supplied by King Bocchus to dispatch them. Alright, let's allow that as well. But is any useful purpose really served by knowing that Pompey was the first to put on a fight in the circus involving 18 elephants, with non-criminals arrayed against him in mock battle? A leader of the state and a man of outstanding kindliness, as his reputation has it. Among leaders of old, he thought it a memorable form of spectacle to destroy human beings in an unheard-of fashion. They fight to the death? That's not enough. Torn to pieces? Not enough. Let them be utterly crushed by animals of massive bulk. It would certainly be preferable for such stuff to be forgotten, for fear that some future strongman might learn of it and be envious of an utterly inhuman episode.
So the idea here is that High Command is
darkness
taking
great
care of
prosperity casts
planning
on
the
Romans?
invasion.
He thought he was above
That's
the laws of
modeled in the
nature when he was
simulation.
throwing so many hordes of human wretches to beasts born under a different sky, when he was arranging war between such disparate creatures, when he was shedding so much blood before the eyes of the Roman people he'd later forced to shed still more blood themselves. But this same man was later taken in by Alexandrian treachery, and offered himself to be run through by the meanest of his chattels. Then at last he recognized the empty boast that was his own surname. But to return to the point from which I digressed, and to demonstrate the futility of the pains that some people take in these same matters, the same source reported that Metellus, in his triumph after conquering the Carthaginians in Sicily, was alone of all Romans in having 120 captured elephants led in procession before his chariot, and that Sulla was the last Roman to extend the Pomerium, which it was the custom of old to extend after the acquisition of Italian, but never provincial, territory. Is there any more benefit in knowing this than to know that the Avonite hill is outside the Pomerium, according to him, for one of two reasons? Either because it was the rallying point for the Italians in secession from Rome, or because the birds had not been propitious when Remus took the auspices there.
Or
And to
territory
know
with
countless
no
other
war.
items beside that are either crammed with lies or improbable.
I
For
will
even if you
take
grant
it.
that people say all these things in good
That's
faith,
where Melania
and even
Trump
if
came
they
from, I
guarantee
believe.
the
Slovenia,
truthfulness
right?
of their writing, whose mistakes will such items of information make fewer? Whose passions will they hold in check?
Alright.
Whom will they make braver, or more just, or more generous of spirit? My friend Fabianus used to say that he
Full
sometimes
return.
wondered whether it was better to apply oneself to no researches at all than to be embroiled in these. Chapter 14. Of all people, they alone who give their time to philosophy are at leisure.
Zuhören!
They alone really live.
Yeah, I don't think
For it's
so.
not just their own lifetime
Philosophy
that
is
they
a,
watch over carefully, but they annex every age
coping
to their
mechanism,
own.
ultimately.
All the years that have gone before are added to their own. Unless we prove most ungrateful, those most distinguished founders of hallowed thoughts came into being before us, and they have prepared for us a way of living, We are led by the work of others into the presence of the most
What's up,
beautiful
Hugos?
treasures, which have been pulled from darkness and brought to light.
Pay no attention to
From
the
no age are
Panzer
we
army on your
debarred.
borders.
We have access to all. And if we want to transcend the narrow limitations of human weakness by our expansiveness of mind, there is great span of time for us to range over. We can debate with Socrates, entertain doubt with Carneades, be at peace with Epicurus, overcome human nature with the
Yes, I
Stoics,
did just put
and
him
go
on the
beyond it
cabinet.
with the Cynics. Since nature allows us shared possession of any age, why not turn from this short and fleeting passage of time, and give ourselves over completely to the past, which is measureless and eternal and shared with our betters? As for those who run about performing their social duties, agitating themselves and others, when they've duly acted like madmen, when they've crossed every threshold on their daily rounds and passed no open door, when they've delivered their money-grubbing greeting to houses very distant from one another,
greeting.
how few patrons will they be able to catch sight of in a city so vast and so fragmented by varied passions? How many patrons will there be whose sleep or self-indulgence or churlishness denies their callers access? How many who, after they've tortured them with the long wait, pretend to be in a hurry as they pass them by? How many will avoid going out through a reception hall packed with clients and make their escape through a door that's hidden from view, as if it were not even crueler to deceive them than to refuse them admittance? How many, half asleep and weighed down by the effects of yesterday's drinking, will yawn with utter disdain and address those wretched clients who cut short their own sleep in order to wait on another's, by the right name only after it's been whispered to them 1,000 times over by lips that hardly move? Do we suppose these clients spend time on morally commendable duties?
I just like openly tell
But
people I
we
don't
can
remember
say
the
as
names.
much of
And
those
I
who will want to have
explain
Zeno,
that I'm autistic
Pythagoras,
and that it's okay.
Democritus, and the
That
other
usually
high
goes
priests
alright.
of philosophical study, and Aristotle and Theophrastus as their closest companions every day. None of these will ever be unavailable to you. None of these will fail to send his visitor off in a happier condition and more at ease with himself. None will let anyone leave empty-handed. They can be approached by all mortals by night and by day. Chapter 15. None of these philosophers will force you to die, but all will teach you how. None of them will diminish your years, but each will share his own years with you. With none of them will conversation be dangerous, friendship life-threatening, or cultivation of them expensive. From them you'll take whatever you wish. It will be no fault of theirs if you fail to take in the very fullest amount you have room for. What happiness, what a fine old age lies in store for the person who's put himself under the patronage of these people. He'll have friends whose advice he can seek on the greatest or least important matters, whom he can consult daily about himself, from whom he can hear the truth
Look how
without
stable
insult
Germany
and
is
receive
right now.
praise without fawning, and who will provide a model after which to
Not
fashion
even a
himself.
squeak of dissent.
There is a common saying
Ooh.
that it was not in our power to choose the
Of
parents we
course,
were
hey there.
under, and that they were
More
given
the
to us
merrier.
by chance. Yet we can be born to whomever we wish. There are
Sorry,
households
Boris.
of the most distinguished intellects. Choose the one into which you'd like to be adopted, and you'll inherit not just the name, but also the actual property, which is not to be hoarded in a miserly or mean spirit. The more people you share it with, the greater it will become. These will open for you the path to immortality, and raise you to an elevation from which no one is cast down. This is the sole means of prolonging mortality, or rather of transforming it into immortality. Honours, monuments, all that ostentatious ambition has ordered by decree or erected in stone, are soon destroyed. There's nothing that the long lapse of time doesn't demolish and transform. But it cannot harm the works consecrated by wisdom. No age will efface them, no age reduce them at all. The next age, and each one after that, will only enhance the respect in which they are held. Since envy focuses on what is close at hand, but we more freely admire things from a distance. So the sage's life is ample in scope, and he's not constricted by the same limit that confines others. He alone is released from the limitations of the human
Ihre
race,
Befehle?
and he is master of all ages as though a god. Some time has
Befehle?
passed. He holds it in recollection. Time is upon us.
Befehle?
He uses it. Time is to come.
Befehle!
This he anticipates. The
Bereit
combining
zum
of all
Ausrücken.
times into one makes his life long. Chapter 16. But for those who forget the past, disregard the present, and fear for the future, life is very brief and very troubled. When they reach the end of it, they realise too late, poor wretches, that they've been busied for so long in doing nothing. And the fact that they sometimes pray for death need hardly be taken as evidence that their life is long. In their folly, they are afflicted by fickle feelings that rush them into the very things they fear. They often pray for death, precisely because they fear it.
You gotta
And there's no reason to
squeeze
find evidence
everything
that they
you
live long,
can
and the fact that the day often seems long to
out
them,
of what you have.
or that they complain the hours pass slowly until the
So
appointed
we're-
hour for dinner arrives.
This
But when
invasive
their usual
internal
preoccupations
colonization
fail
that they were
them, and
talking
they are
about,
left with nothing to
that
do,
was the
they fret
they
without
being the
knowing how
Germans
to
before
apply
World
their
War
free
II,
time, or
as
how to
in
drag it out. And so they
alternative
move on
to
to some
external
other preoccupation
colonization.
and find all the intervening time burdensome.
So we're doing a hybrid
Precisely as they
strategy.
do when a gladiatorial show has been announced.
We're going to take
for
what
a
we
given
can
day,
and then develop
or
it
when
to
the
the
date
extent
of some other
possible.
show or amusement is keenly awaited, and they want to skip over the days in between.
Hopefully without
Any
being on the
postponement of
receiving
something
end
they
of
look
a
forward to is long
large
to them.
coalition.
But the time of actual enjoyment
Ideally,
is
I
short
want
and
to
fleeting,
fight
and
one
made
state
far
at a
shorter by
time.
their own fault, for they desert one pleasure for another and cannot persist
Which is what
steadily
they were
in
trying
any
to
one
do.
desire. Their days aren't long, but hateful. Yet, on the other hand, how short seem the nights they spend cavorting with prostitutes and drinking. Hence the mad inspiration of poets too, who feed human frailty by their stories and imagine that Jupiter actually doubled the length of the night when seduced by sexual pleasure. All this inflaming of our worst passions amounts to nothing but enlisting the gods as setting a precedent for our
Stupid
vices,
commies.
and giving a license for corruption that is justified by a divine example. How can the nights they pay for so dearly not seem so very short to these people?
Alright,
They lose the day
Hungary's
in looking forward to the night,
joining
and
the
the
bad
night
guy
in
club.
fear of the dawn.
You love to see
Chapter
it.
17. The very pleasures of such people are anxious and disturbed
Where am I
by various
docking in
kinds of
Hungary?
alarm. And at the very moment when they are rejoicing, the agitated thought steals in on them. How long will this last? It
There's
is
some kind
the
of
feeling that has
weird
caused
riverine
kings
base.
to weep over their own power. The extent of their prosperity gave them no pleasure, but the prospect of its eventual end terrified them. When the exceedingly arrogant king of the Persians ranged his army over the vast plains, and could only measure its size, not count it, he wept at the thought that within a century not one soldier from that huge force would still be alive. Yet the very man who wept was destined to bring their fate on them, to lose some troops at sea, others at land, some in battle, others in flight, and so to destroy, in a very short time, all those whose 100th year he feared. And what of the fact that even the joys of such people are anxiety-ridden? This is because they don't rest on stable causes, but are disrupted as frivolously as they are produced. But what do you think their times are like when they are wretched even by their own admission?
Comrade
Since even
Wolf,
the
is
joys
it?
which lift and transport them
See what they
above
did
their
there?
fellow men are by no means unmixed. All the greatest blessings cause anxiety, and fortune is never less wisely trusted than when it's at its most advantageous. To maintain prosperity, we need fresh
destabilizing Soviet
prosperity,
Union a little bit.
and other prayers are to be offered
See what
instead
we
of
can get
those
done.
that have already turned out well. Everything that comes our way by chance is unsteady, and the higher our fortunes rise, the more susceptible they are to falling. But what must inevitably collapse gives no one pleasure, and so the life of those who acquire through hard work what they must work harder to possess is necessarily very wretched, and not just very brief. They obtain with great effort what they desire, and they anxiously hold on to what they've obtained. And meanwhile they give no consideration to time's irretrievability.
Come
New
on, join me.
preoccupations take the place of old.
Together.
Hope arouses new hope. Ambition, new ambition. They don't look for an end to their wretchedness, but change the cause of it. We've been tormented by our own public office. We spend more time on somebody else's. We've stopped toiling as candidates. We start canvassing for others. We've given up the vexation of being a prosecutor. We take on that of being a judge. A man stops being a judge. He starts presiding over a special commission. A man spent all his working life managing other people's property for a salary. He's diverted by looking after his own wealth. Marius was done with army service, and the consulship kept him busy. Quintius hurries to get through his dictatorship, but he'll be called back to it from his plough. Scipio will go up against the
Which is-
Carthaginians before being fully ready for such an
Cincinnatus?
undertaking.
Or this is a separate time that
Victorious
happens.
over Hannibal, victorious over Antiochus, he will win distinction in his own consulship and act as surety for his brother's consulship. And but for his own objections, his statue would be placed in Jupiter's company in the Capitoline temple. But discord among the citizens will bring trouble to their saviour, and after he has scorned as a young man public honours rivalling those of the gods, in old age he'll eventually take pleasure in an ostentatiously defiant exile. Reasons for anxiety will never be wanting, whether because of prosperity or wretchedness. Life will always be driven on through one preoccupation after another. We shall always pray for leisure, but never attain it.
Some of us will.
Chapter 18. And so, my dearest Coriolis, remove yourself from the crowd and, storm-tossed more than your years deserve, withdraw at last to a more peaceful haven. Consider how many waves you've endured, and, on the one side, how many storms you've weathered in private, and on the other, how many you've brought on yourself.
Not
in
a
your
single
public
shot
career.
fired.
Long enough has your virtue been demonstrated through toilsome and unceasing proofs. Put to the test what it can achieve in
I
leisure.
believe all this is historically what
The
happened.
greater part of your life,
more or less.
and certainly the better
Still
part,
following the
has been
historical
given to the
path.
state. Take some of your time
But
for yourself.
oh
as
no,
well.
actually, I didn't do anything in the Spanish Civil
It's
War.
not to a
so
sluggish and idle state of inaction that I summon
nobody
you,
really has any reason
or
to
to
see me as
drown all your
militant.
lively energy in sleep and in the pleasures that are dear to the crowd.
I mean, aside from the
That's not to find peace of mind.
extreme military
You'll
buildup
find
I'm doing
tasks
right now.
to busy yourself about in serene
Aside
seclusion
from that,
that are more important than any you've dealt with so energetically
I'm
thus
more or
far.
less a good boy and a
You manage the revenues of the world, it is true, as scrupulously as you
fine
would a
member of the
stranger's,
international
as
community.
diligently as you would your own, as conscientiously as you would the state's. You win affection in a post in which it is hard to avoid being hated. Yet
What's
it is
up,
nevertheless
Yugoslavia?
better, believe me, to know the balance sheet of one's own life than that of the public grain supply. Recall that energetic mind of yours, which is supremely qualified to deal with the greatest challenges, from an office that is certainly eminent, but is hardly in keeping with the happy life. And consider that you didn't make it your aim, with all
Franco
of your
won.
training in the liberal arts from the earliest age, for many thousands of grain measures to be safely entrusted to you. You'd shown promise of something greater and higher. There'll be no shortage of men, of both scrupulous good character and diligent service. But slow-moving pack animals are far better suited to carrying heavy loads than thoroughbred horses. Whoever hampered the fleetness of these well-bred creatures with a weighty burden? Consider, moreover, how stressful it is
Against
to
who?
subject yourself to such a heavy responsibility.
Greece?
You have to deal with the human stomach, and a
the
hungry
bridge?
people neither submits to reason nor is soothed by fair treatment or influenced by any entreaty.
Yeah, no thanks.
Only recently, within those few days after Gaius Caesar died, he was still pained to the utmost,
Greece would
if the dead have
probably
any
get
consciousness,
the UK involved.
because he saw that the Roman people survived him and still had enough rations for 7, or at all events 8 days. Because he made his bridges of boats and played with the empire's resources, we faced the worst kind of disaster even for people under siege, a shortness of food. His imitation of a crazed foreign king of ill-fated arrogance almost came at the cost of mass destruction by starvation and the general catastrophe that follows famine. What was the frame of mind of the officials in charge of the grain supply when they were destined to face stones, weapons, fires, and Gaius?
Achtung!
With the greatest concealment, they covered over such a great sickness lurking amid the state's innermost organs,
Achtung!
and with good reason to be sure, for certain complaints are to be treated without the patient's being aware of them. Knowing about their disease has caused many to die.
Very
Chapter
true.
19. Retire to those pursuits that are calmer, safer, and more important. Do you think it amounts to the same thing whether you are in charge of seeing that imported grain is transferred to the granaries, undamaged by either the dishonesty or the carelessness of the transporters, that it doesn't absorb moisture and then get spoiled through heat, and that it corresponds to the declared weight and measure? Or whether you occupy yourself with these hallowed and lofty studies so as to learn the substance of God, His will, His general character, and His shape? What outcome awaits your soul, where nature lays us to rest upon release from our bodies? What it is that bears the weight of all the heaviest matter of this world in the centre, suspends the light components above,
When he says God like
carries
that, he
fire
doesn't
to
mean
the
it like
highest
you're
parts,
thinking it.
and rouses the stars to their given changes of movement, and to learn
That's not
other
a-
such matters in
the
turn
Christian
that are
conception.
full of great wonders. You really ought to leave ground level and turn your mind's eye to these studies. Now, while enthusiasm is still fresh, those with an active interest should progress to better things. In this mode of life, much that is worth studying awaits you. The love and practice of the virtues, forgetfulness of the passions, knowledge of how to live and to die, and deep
Zuhören!
repose. The plight of all preoccupied people is wretched, but most wretched is the plight of those who labour under preoccupations that are not even their own, whose sleep schedule is regulated by somebody else's, who walk at somebody else's pace, and who are under instructions in that freest of all activities,
Sleep schedule,
loving
huh?
and hating.
But
If
he'd
these
love
people
that
want
Coke.
to know how short their life is, let them reflect on how small a part of it is their very own. Chapter 20. So, when
1939.
you see a man
Nothing bad's
repeatedly
happened
taking
yet.
up the robe of office, or a name well known in public, don't envy him. Those trappings are bought at the cost of life. For 1 year to be dated by their name, they'll waste all their own years. Life deserts some of them amid their first struggles, before the arduous climb up to the peak of their ambition. Some, after they've clambered up through 1,000 indignities to arrive at their crowning dignity, are assailed by the wretched thought that all of their toil has been for an inscription on an epitaph. Some
Try
make
to
out new
be
aspirations
as
for their
strong
extreme
as
old
possible
age,
in the
as if in
field.
their youth.
These divisions
And they
aren't
succumb to weakness
at
amid
full
their
strength,
great
so they're
and
missing all their
immoderate
equipment,
endeavours.
but they make for
It's a shameful end when an old man
a good
acting
way
in
to
court
spook the
for
diplomats
litigants
to give
who are
me what I
perfectly
want
unknown to him,
without a fight.
reads his last, even at the moment
See
when
how
he's
they're-
winning the applause of
I
impressionable
mean, I wouldn't want to
bystanders.
fight with these guys.
It's a disgraceful
but
end when a man
seeing them in
who's
the
sooner
field
worn out by living than by working drops
Goes
dead
into
in
the
middle of his
calculations
days.
whether to capitulate to me
And a
or not.
disgraceful end when a man dies in an act of
I'm
going
gonna make
over his
suggestions
accounts
as to
and
the
draws a
future of
smile
certain
from the air that's
territories
long been kept waiting.
for the good of the people of the
I
territory, of
can't
course.
pass over one example that occurs to me. Gaius Tyrannius was an old man of proven diligence who was past 90 when, on the emperor's initiative, he was granted retirement from his administrative post by Gaius Caesar.
Angetreten.
He gave instructions for himself to be laid out on his bed and to be mourned by his assembled household as if he were dead. The house lamented his elderly master's unemployment and didn't cease their mourning until his job was restored to him. Is it really such a pleasure to die preoccupied? Yet many
Kinda.
have that same attitude,
Come
and
on,
their desire for work lasts longer than their capacity for it.
give me Yugoslavia.
They
Do
struggle
it.
against their bodily infirmity, and old age itself they adjudge a hardship for no other reason than because it removes them from office. The law doesn't draft a soldier after 50. It doesn't require a senator's attendance after 60. It's harder for people to obtain retirement from themselves than from the law. All the time while they plunder, and are plundered, and break in on each other's rest and make each other miserable, life is without profit, without pleasure, without any progress of mind. No one holds death in view. No one refrains from distant hopes. Indeed, some people even make arrangements for things beyond life. Huge tombstones, dedications of public buildings, gladiatorial shows for the funeral, and ostentatious funeral processions. Yet in truth, the funerals of such people should be carried by the light of torches and wax tapers, as if they'd lived for the briefest span.
I see what you're saying, but I don't really agree. I think that's my general take on most stoicism.
The seventh book of the Dialogues of Lucius Annaeus Seneca, addressed to Galen.
Actually, let's make a cultural jump
The
here.
Dhammapada, The Sayings of the Buddha, translated by F. Max Muller and narrated by Robin Homer. Chapter 1.
Emphatically
The
not.
Twin Verses. All that we are is the result of what we have thought. It is founded on our thoughts. It is made up of our thoughts. If a man speaks or acts with an evil thought, pain follows him, as the wheels follow the foot of the ox that draws the carriage. All that we are is the result of what we have
Peaceful
thought.
1939
It is
it's been
founded
so
on
far.
our thoughts. It is made up of our thoughts.
Sure,
If
if
a
nothing
man
bad
speaks
happens.
or acts with a pure thought, happiness follows him, like a shadow that never leaves him.
Achtung!
He abused me, he beat me, he defeated me, he robbed me. In those who harbour such thoughts, hatred will never cease.
Angetreten!
He abused me, he beat me, he defeated me, he robbed me. In
Angetreten!
those who do not harbour such thoughts, hatred will cease. For hatred does not cease by hatred at any time. Hatred ceases by love. This is an old rule.
Befehle!
The world does not know that we must all come to an end here. But those who know it, their quarrels cease at once. He who lives looking for pleasures only,
Oh,
his
so
senses
that's,
uncontrolled, immoderate in his food, idle and weak,
That was interesting.
Mara, the tempter, will certainly
So I
overthrow
also
him,
don't know much about
as the
stoicism.
wind
Is
throws
a
down
big part that you
weak tree.
shouldn't worry about.
He who lives without
That which you
looking
don't
for
understand about the
pleasures,
gods.
his senses well controlled,
I'd assume it would be.
moderate in his food, faithful and strong, him Mara will certainly not overthrow, any more than the wind throws down a rocky mountain.
Is Mara fate?
He who wishes to put on the yellow dress without having cleansed himself from sin, who disregards temperance and truth, is unworthy of
That's
the yellow
religious
dress.
stuff.
But he who has cleansed himself from sin
Boy, it doesn't
is
sound that
well
way.
grounded in all virtues, and regards also temperance and truth, he is indeed worthy of the yellow dress. They who imagine truth in
I wish
untruth
it
and
was just
see
a dress.
untruth in truth never arrive at truth, but follow vain desires. They who know truth in truth and untruth in untruth arrive at truth, and
Alright,
follow
that's how we lock
true
down the
desires.
Baltics.
As rain breaks through an ill-thatched house, passion will break through an unreflecting mind. As rain does not break through a well-thatched house, passion will not break through a well-reflecting
Yugoslavia.
mind.
Look at all these
The
masses of
evildoer
untrained troops
mourns
I have
in
in the
this
field.
world,
Give me
and
what I
he
want.
mourns in the
Ihre
next.
Befehle?
He mourns in both. He mourns and suffers when he sees the evil of his own work. The virtuous man delights in this world, and he delights in the next. He delights in both. He delights and rejoices when he sees the purity of his own work. The evildoer suffers in this world, and he suffers in the next. He suffers in both. He suffers when he thinks of the evil he has done. He suffers more when going on the evil path. The virtuous man is happy in this world, and he is happy in the next. He is happy in both. He is happy when he thinks of the
Albania?
good he has done. He is still more happy when going on the
ties.
good path.
Oof.
The thoughtless man, even if he can recite a large portion of the
Goodness,
law,
Italy.
but is not a doer of it, has no share in the
That was
priesthood,
supposed to be my
but is
coastline.
like a cowherd counting the cows of others. The follower of the law, even if he can recite only a small portion of it,
Whoa.
but having forsaken passion and hatred and foolishness, possesses true knowledge.
Well, now I'm
and
thinking about
serenity
just
of
invading
mind,
Hungary and
he,
Romania.
caring for nothing in this world or that to come, has indeed a share in the priesthood.
Or maybe I'll turn on Italy.
Chapter 2. On Earnestness.
Let's see if Italy does something
Earnestness
stupid.
is the path of immortality, nirvana. Thoughtlessness, the path
The
of death.
Pact of Steel has not been signed.
Those
We're
who are
not
in earnest
allies.
do not die.
And I have no
Those
intention
who
of
are
allying with Italy.
thoughtless are as if dead already. Those who are advanced in earnestness, having understood this clearly, delight in earnestness, and rejoice in the knowledge of the Arias, the elect.
That's crazy.
These wise people, meditative, steady, always possessed of strong powers, attain to nirvana, the highest happiness. If an earnest person has roused himself, if he is not forgetful, if his deeds are pure, if he acts with consideration, if he restrains himself, and lives
I'm a
according
fan of the
to law,
intelligence game here.
then his glory will increase. By rousing himself, by earnestness, by restraint and control, the wise man may make for himself an island which no flood can overwhelm. Fools follow after vanity, men of evil wisdom. The wise man keeps earnestness as his best jewel. Follow not after vanity, nor after the enjoyment of love and lust. He who is earnest and meditative obtains ample joy. When the learned man drives away vanity by earnestness, he, the wise, climbing the terraced heights of wisdom, looks down upon the fools. Serene he looks upon the toiling crowd, as one that stands on a mountain looks down upon them that stand upon the plain. Earnest among the thoughtless, awake among the sleepers, the wise man advances like a racer, leaving behind the hack. By earnestness did Magavan,
Angetreten.
Indra, rise to the lordship of the gods. People praise earnestness. Thoughtlessness is always blamed. A bhikshu, mendicant, who delights in earnestness, who looks with fear on thoughtlessness, moves about like fire, burning
Yes,
all
sir,
his
be a little bit more
fetters,
serious
small
about
or
my
large. A bhikshu,
new
mendicant, who
territories and
delights
the
in
people
reflection,
in them that are
who
not
looks
excited to
with
be
fear on
Germans.
thoughtlessness, cannot fall away
Feel
from
like it's
his
to be too much of
perfect
a problem.
state. He is close upon nirvana.
That's what this is, the resistance.
Chapter
It's
3.
not bad, but it
Thought.
exists.
As a fletcher makes straight his arrow, a wise man makes straight his trembling and unsteady thought, which is difficult to guard, difficult to hold back. As a fish taken from his watery home and thrown on dry ground, Our thought trembles all
I think I'm
over
gonna
in order
focus
to
on
escape the
internal
dominion
dissent.
of Mara, the Tempter. It is good to tame the mind, which is difficult to hold in and flighty, rushing wherever it listeth. A tamed mind brings happiness. Let the wise man guard his thoughts, for they are difficult to perceive, very artful, and they rush wherever they list.
Actually, center
Thoughts
back.
well guarded bring happiness.
I need to keep
Those who bridle their minds,
This-
which
none of these
travels
Soviets
far,
anyway.
moves about alone, is without a
We'll
body,
assign
and
the new
hides in
ones
the
to
chamber
internal
of the
security.
heart, will be free from the bonds of Mara, the Tempter. If a man's thoughts are
Oh, so I was wrong,
unsteady,
the Tempter. I
if he
thought she
does
was
not know
Fates.
the true law, if his peace of mind is troubled, his knowledge will never be perfect.
No.
If a man's thoughts are not dissipated, if his mind is not
Definitely
perplexed,
not.
if he has ceased to think of good or evil, then there
Stupid
is no
Italians.
fear for him while he is watchful.
Go get someone to declare war
Knowing
here.
that this body is fragile like a jar,
I need South
and
Tyrol
making
back.
this thought firm like a fortress, one should attack Mara the Tempter with the weapon of knowledge. One should watch him when conquered, and should never rest. Before long, alas, this body will lie on the earth, despised, without understanding, like a useless log. Whatever a hater may do to a hater, or an enemy to an enemy,
Hater?
a wrongly directed mind will do us greater mischief. Not a mother, not a father will do so much, nor any other relative. A well-directed mind will do us greater service.
Let's see if we can...
Chapter 4.
That war.
Flowers.
Offer them Slovakia.
Who shall overcome this earth, and the world of Yama,
Slovakia's
the
not
lord
German.
of the departed,
It's a Slavic.
and the world of the gods?
Danzig is German.
Who
Well,
shall find out the plainly shown path of virtue, as
There
a
are
clever
bits of
man
Danzig that are
finds
German.
out the right flower? The disciple will overcome the earth, and the world of Yama, and the world of the gods. The disciple will find
I'd like
the
to not get in
plainly
the big
shown
fight until I
path
get
of
my
virtue,
tigers online.
as a clever man finds out the
if
right
I'm gonna have a
flower.
fight, which I
He who knows that this body
Almost
is
certainly
like
will.
froth, and has
Should
learnt
Soviets
that it
will
is as
invade at some
unsubstantial
point.
as a mirage, will break the
I'd like to
flower-pointed
get in
arrow
an
of
alliance
Mara,
with France
and
and
never
UK.
see the king of
keep the United
death.
States out of this and just have a West
Death
versus East
carries
thing.
off a man who is gathering flowers and whose mind is distracted, as a flood carries off a sleeping village. Death subdues a man who is gathering flowers and whose mind is distracted before he is satiated in his pleasures. As the bee collects nectar and departs without
Not doing
injuring
anything
the
that's gonna
flower
drag me
or
into
its
a
colour or
conflict.
scent, so let the sage dwell in his village. Not the perversities of others, not their sins of commission or omission, but his own misdeeds and
Got about a
negligences
year
should a
away from
sage
tigers
take
being
notice
done.
of. Like a beautiful flower, full of colour but without scent, are the fine but fruitless words of him who does not act accordingly. But like a beautiful flower, full of colour and full of scent, are the fine and fruitful words of him who acts accordingly.
We're not gonna waste them.
As many kinds of wreaths can be
Just keep
made
doing
from a
your
heap
thing.
of flowers, so many good things may be achieved by a mortal when once he is born.
Actually, since we're not
The scent of flowers does not travel against
doing
the
anything that
wind,
requires...
nor that of sandalwood, or of tagara and malika flowers. But
Might
the
as well get
odour of
serious about
good
crushing this
people
resistance.
travels even against the wind. A good man pervades every place. Sandalwood or tagara, a lotus
like to just
flower
stamp
or
it
a
out entirely.
vasiki, among these sorts of perfumes, the perfume of virtue is unsurpassed. Mean is the scent that comes from tagara and sandalwood. The perfume of those who possess virtue rises up to the gods as the highest. Of the people who possess these virtues, who live without thoughtlessness, and who are emancipated through true knowledge, Mara the Tempter
Although it might
never
be thinking about
finds
this
the way.
wrong.
As on a heap of rubbish cast upon
Are
the
they gonna
hive,
go for it or
the
not?
lily will grow full of sweet perfume
If
and
not,
delight.
we're gonna have
Thus,
to think
the
about
disciple of the truly
settling
enlightened
the Polish
Buddha
issue.
shines forth by his knowledge among those who are like rubbish, among the people that walk in darkness. Chapter 5. The Fool. Long is the night to him who is awake. Long is a
Oh!
mile to him who is tired.
They went for it.
Long is life
Probably
to
because
the
of my
foolish who do not know the true law.
field strength, I assume.
If a traveller does not meet with one who is his better or his equal, let him firmly keep to his solitary
Still
journey.
no shots fired.
There is no companionship with a fool. These sons belong to me, and this wealth belongs to me. With such
Well, in
thoughts,
that
a fool is
case,
tormented.
let's start
He himself does not
assembling
belong
an
to
anti-Soviet
himself,
coalition.
much less sons and wealth. The fool who knows his
I know
foolishness is
Bulgarian's
wise at least so
friendly.
far, but a fool who thinks himself wise, he is a fool indeed. If a fool be associated
I
with a
do
wise
kinda wanna
man,
invade
even all his life, he will
Romania
perceive
for
the
the oil,
truth
though.
as little as a spoon perceives the taste of soup. If an intelligent man be associated for 1 minute only with a wise
they're
man,
guaranteed by-
he will soon perceive the truth.
Okay, we're
as
just gonna
the
line.
tongue
We're not
perceives
gonna
the
invade.
taste of soup. Fools of little understanding have themselves for their greatest enemies, for they do evil deeds which must bear bitter fruits. That deed is not well done of which a man must repent, and the reward of which he receives crying and with a tearful face. No, that deed is well done of which a man does not repent, and the reward of which he receives gladly and cheerfully. As long as the evil deed does not bear fruit, the fool thinks it is like honey, but when it ripens, then the fool suffers grief. Let a fool, month after month, eat his food, like an ascetic, with the tip of a blade of kusa grass. Yet he is not worth the 16th particle of those who have well weighed the law. An evil deed, like newly drawn milk,
Roll the
does
dice.
not turn suddenly.
Angetreten.
Smouldering, like
Daddy wants to
fire covered by
complete the
ashes, it
German
follows
Reich.
the fool. And when the evil
Daddy needs
deed,
South Taiwan
after
to
it
do
has
that.
become known, brings
Ihre
sorrow
Befehle?
to the fool, then it destroys his bright lot.
That was all in
Nay,
character.
it cleaves his head. Let the fool wish for a false reputation, for precedence among the bhikshus, for lordship in the convents,
Since the
for
fools are my new
worship
friends.
among other people.
Gonna go ahead and get
May
off their
both the
border.
layman and he who has left the world think that this is done by me. May they be subject to me in everything which is
I've
to be done
never
or is not to
got
be done.
Danzig peacefully.
Thus is the mind
Ever,
of
ever,
the fool,
ever.
and his desire and pride increase. One is the road that leads to wealth, another the road that leads to
So
nirvana.
let's integrate.
If the bhikshu, the disciple of Buddha, has learnt this, he will not yearn for honour. He will strive after separation from the world. Chapter 6. The Wise Man, or Pandita. If you see an intelligent man who tells you where
so
true
we've
treasures
got-
are
we
to
have
be
our
found,
synthetic,
who shows you what is to be
rubber
avoided,
and fuel
and
factories
administers
being
reproofs,
built.
follow that wise man. It will be better, not
Our
worse, for
infrastructure
those who follow
is
him.
as high as it
Let
can
him
be throughout
admonish,
much of the Reich.
let him teach,
I'm just
let him
integrating the new
forbid
territory
what
right
is
now.
improper. He will be beloved of the
our
good, by the bad he will be hated.
Resistance is
Do not have evildoers for friends. Do not have low people
Diminishing.
for friends. Have virtuous people for friends. Have for friends the best of men. He who drinks in the law lives happily with a serene
if
mind.
that helps or not.
The sage
wrong
rejoices
way. That's definitely the wrong
always
thing to
in
do.
the law, as preached by the elect, the Arias. Well makers lead the water wherever they like. Fletchers bend the
Stand
arrow.
out.
Carpenters bend a log of
Take the
wood.
foot off their neck.
Wise
but
people
for now.
fashion themselves.
All right.
A solid rock is not shaken by the wind. Wise people falter not amidst blame and praise. Wise people, after they have listened to the laws, become serene, like a deep, smooth, and still lake.
The Italian are
Good
proud
people
people like
walk
us who
on
will not part
whatever
easily
befall.
for power.
The good
However,
do
they
not
must also
prattle,
realize that power is
longing
ultimately
for
determines
pleasure.
victory, and that through the
Whether
treachery of our
touched
great
by
civilization,
happiness
it will
or
end in a
sorrow,
flash.
wise people
Steel
never
yourself
appear
for the short will
elated
come,
or
young men of
depressed.
German Reich.
If,
Not the
whether
German
for his
Reich,
own
German
sake
Reich.
or for the sake of
For
others,
Italy would not be
a
taken
man
without spilling the
wishes
blood of
neither
both
for a
ourselves
son,
and our
nor for
enemies.
wealth, nor for
Possible to even
lordship.
understand between the
And if he does not
similarly-minded
wish for
Germans
his
of
own
Italy and the
success
German
by
Reich has given
unfair
way to a
means,
campaign to take that
then he
territory
is
by
good,
force,
wise, and virtuous.
although not entirely without grudging
Few
respect
are
for
there
enemies.
among men
Adolf
who
Hitler
arrive at
still
the other shore,
holds no doubt
become our
about
house.
who is superior.
The other people here run up and down the shore. But those who, when the law has been well
Christmas
preached
in
to
Berlin.
them, follow the law, will pass across the dominion of death, however difficult to overcome. A wise man should leave the dark state of ordinary life and follow the bright state of the bhikshu. After going from his home to a homeless state, he should, in his retirement, look for enjoyment where there seemed to be no enjoyment. Leaving all pleasures behind and calling
I just kind of
nothing
like
his
accidentally
own,
did this.
the
what we're
wise
talking
man
about.
should purge himself from all the troubles of the mind. Those whose mind is well grounded in the 7 elements of knowledge, who, without clinging to anything, rejoice
Ancient
in
philosophy.
freedom from attachment,
7 elements
whose
of
appetites
knowledge.
have been conquered, and who are full of light, are free,
No,
even in
no,
this
no,
world.
Hadi, I'm sorry. Mr. Mussolini.
Angetreten.
Chapter 7. The Venerable, or Arhat. There is no suffering for him who has finished his journey and abandoned grief, who has freed himself on all sides and thrown
Idea
off
being
all
we're going to rush into
fetters.
Tyrol,
They depart
capture,
with their thoughts
integrate
well
to the Reich,
collected.
and then
They are
snag
not
the rest
happy
of
in their
Italy.
abode, like swans who have left their lake.
If we can.
They
which I
leave
assume is
their
gonna be
house
fairly
and home.
simple.
Men who have no riches, who live on recognized
Only ones I
food,
grabbed.
who have perceived void and
It's
the
over.
unconditioned freedom of nirvana, their path is difficult
Buddies!
to understand, like that of birds in the air. He whose appetites are stilled, who is not absorbed in enjoyment, who has perceived void and the unconditioned freedom of nirvana, his path is difficult to understand, like that of birds in the air.
Boy, is that tempting. But that's
The
real
gods
aggressive.
even envy him whose senses, like horses well broken in by the driver, have been subdued, who is free from pride and free from appetites. Such a one who does his duty is tolerant like the earth, like Indra's bolt. He is like a lake without mud. No new births are in store for him. His thought is quiet. Quiet are his word and deed.
So we have a
when he has
Mediterranean port
obtained
now.
freedom by true knowledge, when he has thus become a quiet man.
Which is
The
pretty
man
wild.
who is free from credulity, but knows the uncreated,
I mean, Germany
who
never
has
has a
cut all ties,
Mediterranean
removed
port
all
throughout
temptations,
history.
renounced all
Like, I'm
desires,
sure there are like
he
a couple
is
of
the
moments
greatest
here and
of
there,
men.
but it's not a
In a
common thing.
hamlet or in a forest, or in the deep water or on the dry land,
Sorry, buddy.
wherever venerable persons, our Hanta, dwell, that place is delightful. Forests are delightful. Where the world finds no delight, there the passionless will find delight, for they look not for pleasures.
Oh, because I'm using them for cavalry. That's
Chapter
why.
8.
Yeah,
The
maybe that's a bad idea.
Thousands.
Let's.
Even though a speech be 1,000
That's
words,
too much.
but made up of senseless words, one word of sense is better, which if a man hears, he becomes
The idea
quiet.
is for them to dig in.
Even though a gatha, poem, be 1,000 words, but made up of senseless words, one word of a gatha is better,
There.
which if a man hears, he becomes quiet.
So that
Though
should
a man
free up.
recite 100
Okay,
gathas, made up of senseless words, one word of the law is better, which if a man hears, he becomes quiet. If one man conquer in battle 1,000 times thousands men, and if another conquer himself, he is the greatest of conquerors. One's own self conquered is better than all other people. Not even a god, a Gandharva, not Mara with Brahman could change into defeat the victory of a man who has vanquished himself.
I love how
and
similar
always
all
lives
philosophy
under
is if you just
restraint.
listen to enough of it.
If a man
They
for
just
100
speak about
years
things differently.
sacrifice month after month with 1,000, and if he but for one moment pay homage to a man whose soul is grounded in true knowledge, better is that homage than sacrifice for 100 years. If a man for 100 years worship Agni, fire, in the forest, and if he but for one moment pay homage to a man whose soul is grounded in true knowledge, better is that homage than sacrifice for 100 years. Whatever a man sacrifice in this world as an offering or as an oblation for a whole year in order to gain merit, the whole of it is not worth a farthing. Reverence shown to the righteous is better.
Should be getting close to our.
He who always greets and constantly
Little Italian
reveres the
campaign,
aged,
right?
4 things will increase to him: life, beauty, happiness, power. But he who lives 100
About
years,
halfway there, so
vicious
6th of
and
June,
unrestrained,
1940.
a life of one day is better if a
What
man
happened
is
on the 6th of
virtuous
June?
and reflecting.
Not
And he
1940,
who
of
lives
course, 4 years
100
later.
years,
But
ignorant and unrestrained, a life of one day is better if
So
a
if I
man is
could-
wise and reflecting. And he who lives 100 years, idle and weak, a life of one day is better if a man has attained
I
firm
wish I could
strength.
align them, but that's
And he who
unlikely.
lives 100 years, not seeing beginning and end, a life of one day is better
Okay, so
if a
we're
man sees
almost have
beginning
all
and
of our
end.
Czechoslovakian
And he who lives 100
resistance
years, not seeing the
gone.
immortal place, a life of one day is better if a man sees the immortal place. And he who lives 100 years, not seeing the highest law,
Zuhören.
a life of one day is better if a man sees the highest law. Chapter 9. Evil. If a man would hasten towards the good, he should keep his thought away from evil. If a man does what is good slothfully,
We're gonna
his
use
mind
our-
delights in evil. If a man commits a sin, let him not do it again.
I
Let
think
him
if you
not
have your
delight in
armies
sin.
on a territory
Pain
that
is
has
the
active
outcome of evil.
resistance, they assist in
If a man does what is good,
that
let him do it again.
suppression
Let him
number.
delight in it. Happiness
Might not
is
be
the
true,
outcome of good.
but I think it is, so we're gonna
Even an evildoer sees happiness as long as his evil deed has
help
not
ourselves out a little bit
ripened.
here.
But when his evil deed has ripened, then does the evildoer see evil. Even a good man
are
sees
just the
evil
new
days
territories
as
and-
long as his good deed has not ripened.
Kind of
But
reinforcing.
when his good deed has ripened,
And
then
the other
does the
question
good
is Italian
man see
sovereignty.
happy days. Let no man think lightly of evil, saying in his heart, "It will not come nigh unto me."
Listen to Adolf Hitler's recent
Even
speech.
by the
Invasion
falling
Hitler
of
appears
water
imminent.
drops,
Dissenting with his
a water
objective
pot
hopes
is
for is
filled.
on the
The fool becomes full
rise.
of evil, even if he gather it
Thank
little by
you,
little.
Dr. Goebbels.
Let no man think lightly of good, saying in his heart, "It will
Thank
not
you,
come
Loyal
nigh unto
Lapware.
me." Even by the falling of water drops, a water pot is filled. The wise man becomes full of good, even if he gather it little by little. Let a man avoid evil deeds
Don't ask
as
too
a
many
merchant.
questions about
If
what
he has few
fighting
companions and carries
partisans
much
exactly
wealth,
consists of.
avoids a dangerous road. As a man who loves life avoids poison.
Okay.
He who has no wound on his hand may touch poison with his hand. Poison does not affect one who has no wound, nor is there evil for one who does not commit evil. If a man offend a harmless, pure and innocent person, the evil falls back upon that fool, like light dust thrown up against the wind. Some people are born again. Evildoers go to hell, righteous people go to heaven. Those who are free from all worldly desires attain nirvana.
Do they?
Not in the sky, not in the midst of the sea, not if we enter the clefts of the mountains, is there known a spot in the whole world where a man might be freed from an evil deed. Not in the sky, not in the midst of the sea, not if we enter the clefts of the mountains, is there known a spot in the whole world where death could not overcome the mortal. Chapter 10. Punishment. All men tremble at punishment. All men fear death. Remember that you are like unto them, and do not kill, nor cause slaughter. All men tremble at punishment. All men love life. Remember that you are like unto them, and do not kill, nor cause slaughter. He who, seeking his own happiness, punishes or kills
portfolio.
beings who also
Alright.
long for
What's
happiness,
this?
will not find happiness after death. He who, seeking his own happiness, does not punish or kill beings who also long for happiness, will find happiness after death.
We will indeed sign the
Do not
Faustian
speak
bargain.
harshly to anybody. Those who are spoken to will answer thee in the
Happily.
same way. Angry speech is
That
painful.
would be helpful.
Blows for blows will touch thee.
So I could get like a
If, like
solid
a shattered
wall
metal
of
gong, you utter not, then you
allies
have reached nirvana.
against the Soviet Union.
Contention is
I mean,
not
this
known
whole
to you.
Axis
As a
here.
cowherd with his staff drives his cows into the stable, so do age and death drive the life of men. A fool does not know when he commits his evil deeds, but the wicked man burns by his own deeds, as if burnt by fire. He who inflicts pain on innocent and harmless persons will soon come to one of these 10 states. He will have cruel suffering, loss, injury of the body, heavy affliction or loss of mind, or a misfortune coming from the king, or a fearful accusation, or loss of relations, or destruction of treasures, or lightning fire will burn his houses, and when his body is destroyed, the fool will go to hell. Not nakedness, not plaited hair, not dirt, not fasting or lying on the earth, not rubbing with dust, not sitting motionless, can purify a mortal who has not overcome desires. He who, though dressed in fine apparel, exercises tranquility, is quiet, subdued, restrained, chaste, and has ceased to find fault with all other beings, he indeed is a Brahmana, an ascetic, Sramana, a friar, bhikshu. Is there in this world any man so restrained by humility that he does not mind reproof, as a well-trained horse the whip? Like a well-trained horse, when touched by the whip, be you active and lively, and by faith, by virtue, by energy, by meditation, by discernment of the law, you will overcome this great pain of reproof. Perfect in knowledge and in behaviour, and never forgetful. Well-makers lead the water wherever they like. Fletchers bend the arrow, carpenters bend a log of wood. Good people fashion themselves. Chapter 11.
Have a pretty overwhelming advantage against Italy.
How is their laughter? How is their joy? Or is this world always burning? Why do you not seek a light?
Italy is
you
an asshole
who are surrounded by darkness.
because they invaded
Look at this
Ethiopia a
dressed-up
couple years
lump,
back for no
covered
particular
with
reason.
wounds, joined together,
I don't think anyone's going to come to their
sickly,
aid.
full of many thoughts, which has no strength, no hold. This body is wasted, full of sickness
then
and
we're
frail.
pretty
This heap of corruption
close to,
breaks
actual
into pieces.
world power status.
Life indeed ends in death. Those white bones,
Integrating
those
all this.
gourds thrown away in autumn.
Ideally,
what
you'd take the
pleasure
rest
is
of
there in looking
Eastern
at them?
Europe too.
After a stronghold
But at
has
this
been made of
point,
the bones,
if it's run
it is
well-
covered with flesh and blood, and there dwell in it old age and
But
death,
We have to
pride
conquer them
and
first.
deceit.
It's not counter
The
Italians.
brilliant
until
chariots
they're
of kings are
bending the knee.
destroyed. The body also approaches destruction, but the virtue of good people never approaches destruction. Thus do the good say to the good. Looking for the maker of this tabernacle, I shall have to run through a course of many births, so long as I do not find him, and painful is birth again and again. But now, maker of the tabernacle, you have been seen. You shall not make this tabernacle again. All thy rafters
really
are broken,
allergic to the idea
thy
that they won't
ridgepole
exist
is
at some
sundered.
point.
The mind, approaching the eternal, Visankara, Nirvana, has attained to the extinction of all desires. Men who have not observed proper discipline, and have not gained treasure in their youth, perish like old herons in a lake without fish. Men who have not observed proper discipline, and have not gained treasure in their youth, lie like broken bows, sighing after the past. Chapter 12. Self. If a man hold himself dear, let him watch himself carefully. During one at least out of the 3 watches, a wise man should be watchful. Let each man direct himself first to what is proper,
Mindfulness.
then
That's what
let
you're
him
talking
teach
about.
others. Thus a wise man will not suffer. If a man make himself as he teaches others to be, then, being himself well subdued, he may subdue others. One's own self is indeed difficult to subdue.
Just do that.
Self is the lord of self. Who else could be the lord?
So I'd rather not
With
fight
self
France.
well subdued,
What I
a
want is to
man
have
finds
France
a
fight
lord
with me
such as
against the
few
Soviet
can
Union.
find.
That's what I want.
The evil done by oneself, self-begotten, self-bred, crushes the foolish, as a diamond breaks a precious stone.
I will fight for the
He
German
whose
man and woman
wickedness is
to the
very
last
great
drop of
brings
French
himself
blood.
down to the state where his enemy wishes him to be, as a
And all the
creeper does
infrastructure.
with
Here you
the
go.
tree which it
Go get him,
surrounds.
guys.
Bad deeds and deeds hurtful to ourselves are easy to do. What is beneficial and good, that is very difficult to do. The foolish man who scorns the rule of the venerable Arahat, of the elect
Actually,
Arya,
let's not.
of the virtuous, and follows
Change your
false
mind on that.
doctrines, he bears fruit to his own destruction, like the fruits of the Kataka reed. By oneself the evil
we're
is
just gonna
done.
do
By oneself one suffers. By
heavy
oneself evil is left
focus
undone.
once I get the
By
tigers up.
oneself one is purified.
Then we'll just use our
Purity and impurity belong to oneself.
light force.
No one can purify another.
for some
Let
other
no one
stuff.
forget his own duty for the sake of another's, however great. Let a man, after he has discerned his own
Friends.
duty, be always attentive to his duty. Chapter 13. The World. Do not follow the evil law. Do not live on in thoughtlessness. Do not follow false doctrine. Be not a friend of the world. Rouse thyself. Do not...
Okay, I got it. Those naive citizens of the German Reich who imagine the Italian as a people. Imagine the Italians as a people of peace. Who imagine the Italian as a person of peace would work. Imagine the Italian as a people of peace is... You can get away with it. But it doesn't sound good. Who imagine the Italian as a people of peace are entirely out of touch with reality. Those who live at our border do not have the luxury of such delusions, seeing their troops closing in on us just to cross it. They're coming right for us. This is the threat we cannot leave unanswered. With every passing day, Italy is preparing for war. I wonder why they would do that. It would be madness for us not to do the same. The Italian military presence close to our territory has sparked increased concern as this nation appears more and more to be the enemy of the NSDAP. Whether it is the cause or the effect of their polemic is a matter of contention. Well, I think that it is the Italian polemic that is to blame. NSDAP is National Socialist German Workers' Party in English, aka the Nazis.
be idle. Follow the law of virtue. The virtuous rests
Nazi
in
is
bliss
actually a
in this
pejorative.
world and in the next. Follow the law of virtue. Do not follow that of sin. The virtuous rests in bliss in this world and in the next. Look upon the world as a bubble. Look upon it as a mirror.
All right.
The king of death does not see him who thus looks down upon the
What do you
world.
say to the King of Death?
Come, look at
Your
this
Majesty,
glittering world,
please,
like unto a
take
royal
me.
chariot. The foolish are immersed
Jokes.
in it, but the wise do not touch it. He who formerly was reckless
Alright,
and
we're gonna get this
afterwards
on yet?
became sober brightens up this world, like the moon when freed from clouds. He whose evil deeds are covered by
more
good
month.
deeds brightens up this world, like the moon when freed from the clouds. This world is dark. Few only can see here. A few only go to heaven. Like birds.
I don't know why these are so funny to me right now. Well, I mean, I know why they're funny to me right now, but they are funny. German Reich prepares for great struggle. The Italian are a proud people like us who will not part easily with power. However, they must also realize that power is what ultimately determines victory, and that the trajectory of our great civilizations can only end in a clash. Steel yourself for the struggle to come, young men of German Reich. Not the German Reich, of course. For Italy will not be taken without spilling the blood of... Oh, we've already read this, haven't we? Yeah, I have no doubt who is superior. Right.
Birds escaped from the net.
We get it.
The swans go on the path of the sun. They go through the ether by means of their miraculous power. The wise are led out of this world when they have conquered Mara and his train. If a man has transgressed one law, and speaks lies, and scoffs at another world, there is no evil he will not do. The uncharitable do not go to the world of the gods. Fools only do not praise liberality. A wise man rejoices in liberality, and through it becomes blessed in the other world. Better than sovereignty over the earth, better than going to heaven, better than lordship over all worlds, is the reward of the first step in holiness. Chapter 14. The Buddha, the Awakened.
I mean, we have
He
a
whose
million
conquest is not conquered again,
men in reserve
into
right
whose
now, so that's
conquest
not...
no one in this world
What?
enters, By what track can you
That's just
lead
not
him?
true.
The awakened, the omniscient, the
Hey, welcome to the club, boys.
He whom no desire with its snares and poisons can
homeland.
lead astray. By
Niggy.
what track can you lead him? The awakened, the omniscient, the trackless. Even the gods envy those who are awakened and not forgetful, who are given to meditation, who are wise
not a
and who delight in the
justification, it's
repose
just.
of retirement from the world. Difficult to obtain is the conception of men, difficult is the life of mortals, difficult is the hearing of the true law, difficult is the birth of the awakened, the attainment of Buddhahood. Not to commit any sin, to do good and to purify one's mind, that is the teaching of all the awakened. The awakened call patience the highest penance, long-suffering the highest nirvana, for he is not an
I
anchorite,
didn't know what he said.
pravragita, who strikes others. He is not an ascetic, shramana, who insults others. Not to blame, not to strike, to live restrained under the law, to be moderate in
Alright,
eating,
who's in the mood for
to
some
sleep
Italian?
and sit alone, and to dwell on the highest thoughts. This is the teaching of the awakened. There is no satisfying lusts, even by a shower of gold pieces. He who knows that lusts have a short taste and cause pain, he is wise. Even in heavenly pleasures he finds no satisfaction. The
Angetreten.
disciple who is fully awakened delights only in the destruction of all desires. Men, driven by fear, go to many a
Ihre Befehle.
refuge, to mountains and forests, to groves and sacred trees. But that is not a safe refuge. That is not the best
Ausrücken.
refuge. A man is not delivered from all pains after having gone to that refuge. He who takes refuge with Buddha, the law and the church, he who, with clear understanding, sees the four holy truths, pain,
Actually, let's do
the
this.
origin of pain, the destruction of pain, and the eightfold holy way that leads to the quieting of pain. That is the safe refuge. That is the best refuge. Having gone to that refuge, a man is delivered from all pain.
Ausrücken.
A supernatural person, a
Where's
Buddha, is not easily found.
Roll
He is
through.
not born everywhere. Wherever such a sage is
Then we'll
born, that race
See where we
prospers.
need to push to finish
Happy
off
is the arising of the
the
awakened.
main area. What I don't want is
Happy
them
is the
to
teaching of the true law.
do a
Happy is
counteroffensive
peace
from down
in the
here,
church.
so we're gonna
Happy is
take
the
this
devotion
little
of those
exclave out
who are
entirely.
at peace. He who pays homage to those who deserve homage, whether the awakened Buddha or their disciples, those who
Okay,
have overcome the host of
let's-
evils and crossed the flood of sorrow, he who pays homage to such as have found deliverance and know no fear, his merit can never be measured by anybody.
Now we got a game.
Chapter 15. Happiness. Let us live happily then, not hating those who hate us. Among men who hate us, let us dwell free from hatred. Let us live happily then, free from ailments among the ailing. Among men who are ailing, let us dwell free from ailments. Let us live happily then, free from greed among the greedy.
Ihre Befehle.
Among men who are greedy, let us
End
dwell
this war
free
as quickly
from
as
greed.
possible. We're,
Let us live happily then, though we call
expanse.
nothing our own. We shall be like the bright gods, feeding on happiness.
So,
Victory breeds hatred, for the conquered is unhappy. He who has given up both victory and defeat,
We're gonna have a breakthrough
he
here, I
the
think.
contented, is happy. There is no fire like passion. There is
But
no
hopefully
losing
we'll be able
throw
to
like hatred. There is no pain like this body.
get in behind
There
the
is no
Alps
happiness
here.
higher than rest. Hunger is the worst
Basically
of
doing a
diseases, the
circle
body
up.
the greatest of pains. If one knows this truly,
I guess whichever we're
that
gonna
is
do a
nirvana,
pincer
the
movement.
highest happiness. Health is the greatest
just
of
an
gifts,
encirclement.
contentedness the best riches.
There we go. Got our
Trust
breakthrough.
is the best of relationships, nirvana
Okay, let's-
the highest happiness.
Befehle.
He who has tasted the sweetness of
Focus on
solitude
this
and
sector.
tranquility is free from
Bereits
fear
zum Ausdruck.
and free from sin, while he tastes
through.
the sweetness of drinking in. The sight of the elect,
You'll be
Ariya,
fine.
is good. To live with them is always
Here's the key.
happiness. If a man does not see fools, he will be truly happy. He who walks in the company of fools fools suffers a long way.
They can't
Company
keep
with
holding out.
fools, as with an enemy, is
There we
always
go.
painful.
Alright.
Company with the wise is pleasure, like meeting with kinsfolk.
This is gonna just about end the
Therefore,
war.
one ought to follow the wise, the intelligent, the learned,
Actually,
the much enduring, the dutiful, the elect.
there.
One ought to follow a good and wise man, as the moon follows the path of the stars.
Okay,
Chapter
they're
60.
done.
Pleasure.
All but done.
He who gives himself to vanity and does not give himself to meditation, forgetting the real aim of life and grasping at pleasure, will in time envy him who has exerted himself in meditation. Let no man ever look for what is pleasant or what is unpleasant. Not to see what is pleasant is pain, and it is pain to see what is unpleasant.
Found the shrimp
Let,
punt.
therefore, no man love anything. Loss of the beloved is evil.
Ihre Befehle.
Those who love nothing and hate nothing have no fetters. From
There.
pleasure comes grief, from pleasure comes fear.
That's it.
He who is free from pleasure knows neither
Just
grief
mopping
nor
up now.
fear. From affection comes grief, from affection comes fear. He who is free from affection knows neither grief
Alright,
nor
now
fear.
let's gear up for the Soviet
From lust
fight.
comes grief, from lust comes fear. He who is free from lust knows neither grief nor fear. From love comes grief, from love comes fear. He who is free from love knows neither grief nor fear.
I don't like that at
From
all.
greed comes grief, from greed comes fear. He who is free from greed knows neither grief nor fear. He who possesses virtue and intelligence, who is just, who speaks the truth and does what is his own business, him the world will hold dear. He in whom a desire for the ineffable,
Okay, so
nirvana, has
let's talk about
sprung up.
why I know this war's over. 'Cause I think that's what probably why people watch this sort of thing. Alright, so the Italians have basically 3 different pockets now. The war started with 2 pockets. They had an exclave here, Albania, but then the rest of their territory is more or less contiguous, and they can't do anything on the ocean. So just Sardinia and Sicily are completely secure for the Italians. It's just a matter of their mainland here. Now what I've done is because they have such a narrow little coastline, and they have all of their forces in this narrow little coastline on that side of the Adriatic. This is the Adriatic, right? I think. Yeah, that's the Adriatic. On this side of the Adriatic, all I needed to do was collapse one part of their Adriatic coast, and I've effectively created a 3rd exclave, right? So I'm just going to reduce them one by one, defeat their armies in detail, and then occupy the mainland. That's all that's happening right now. That's why I was so focused on creating that breakthrough to the coast. This is similar to what happened against the Allies in the 40s in the campaign against campaign into France and the Low Countries. This was actually Hitler's plan. The generals did not agree. The generals just want to do the Schlieffen plan from World War One. Basically, the same thing. It would have the same result. Hitler did the dash through the Ardennes and then to the coast. Remember the movie Dunkirk? That was Hitler's idea. He tried to do that again with the Battle of the Bulge, basically rerun the Ardennes campaign. Didn't work the second time. What with all the Americans around? That was the whole. That's Bastogne, right? I think I had these terms right. I'm not a historian by any means, and World War II isn't really my focus anyway. It's just kind of interesting. Sturm, huh? So Wolf was what the before Hitler was in power. That was his code name in the National Socialist Party. That's why I was laughing about Wolf being the code name of a adware agent. Okay, so let's. So we're almost completely subdued down here in the former Yugoslavia. Let's calm down the Polish minority up here. Yeah, so the thing with exclaves is they can't mutually support each other. And they can't... I have control of the air. Well, I think I have control of the air. Getting there, at least. You know, it would help if I actually used my air force. I'm very stupid. I forgot to take them off of, exercises, so we've just been using our ground forces here. I'm sure anyone that knows this game has been screaming about that. Sorry, guys. That should automatically take them off. Because I had them set to their missions and stuff, but then I had... Oh well. Well, now we have control of the air. Actually, I do want to focus on the Balkans, not the Alps campaign right now. So let's reduce these pockets. Maintain air superiority up here, I think, with just some fighters. But as far as ground attack, and let's of course assign our naval bombers to the Adriatic. Oops, that's not a naval bomber. That's a naval bomber. Keep you. There we go. Perfect. Okay, so we should start getting some pretty good naval strikes going in the Adriatic here. If we can drop some battleships. I don't know if Italy has an aircraft carrier too at this point. I really don't know. But this is going to... So they're resupplying their exclaves here over the sea because they don't have land connection. So now that the Adriatic is just completely saturated with naval bombers, they shouldn't be able to get anything through. And that should hasten the end and the collapse of the defense of the exclaves here. Pretty rapidly, actually. Yeah, we're breaking through. Okay, just dropped a couple destroyers. Another destroyer, another destroyer. More destroyers. Those aren't what I want though, I want the convoys. Okay, so we're invading Albania. Let me take some more direct action. Just blasted through an Italian tank division.
Greif weiter an!
That is how you blitzkrieg. Oh man, Italy is done. There's a convoy. Okay, here's what I'm looking for. Get some real hits on them. I mean, I'm losing plenty of naval aircraft, but I mean, 3 bombers versus 6 destroyers. I'll make that trade all day long. Too bad. Was it the ice pick guy? So that's not how it went in real life. In real life, he got. I think in Mexico, right? Sure, we're maintaining our air dominance. Yep. Yeah, the Italians are just outclassed. What are you doing? Don't you dare drag me into something I don't want to be involved in. What are you doing? Greece? I don't want to fight Greece, man. I'll fight Greece, but... No, I won't, because that's going to end up in a two-front war. Not going to fight Greece. If they do that, they're on their own. Couldn't possibly care about what happens about that. I do want... There we go. That doesn't matter. So that all balanced out. The Romanians and the Hungarians exchanged some territory. So now we have a pretty good little alliance network going here. Poland's not allied yet, but we are becoming quite friendly because of the obvious threat the Soviet Union poses to both of us. We sure... Oh, because they're taking the Baltics. They just took 2 Baltic states. Estonia's the only one left. Good luck, Esti. So I need to start thinking about a war with the Soviet Union here. Once Italy capitulates. How exactly do I want to fight it? Because I can't let the Soviet Union take the Romanian oil fields. So I think I'm going to actually move some defensive forces at least in defense of the Romanian border. I don't care quite so much about what happens to Poland, but I need to control this area. Was that Bessarabia? Yeah, Bessarabia needs to be a fortress, essentially, against the Soviet Union. I wish I controlled it directly. So I'd like to build some fortifications. Not that, can I? Just build them? No. Why not though, right?
Angetreten.
Okay, so now we see how our exclave squishing campaign is paying dividends. This is almost done here.
Befehle.
Push all at once.
Achtung.
That should collapse that pocket. All right, now. I don't wanna. Let's see what we can get done with Greece. Greece is pretty resource rich. Yeah. It'd be nice to have. Yeah, the chromium for tanks, tungsten for the gun barrels and stuff. I might have that backwards. I'm not good at material science. Nothing big, but we are keeping them from resupplying their troops. Because I don't really care about the Italian Navy as such. They're not a sea power. I just care about them as... Okay, so we have... That exclave is done. This one's about to fall, and then, so once the exclave is squished, we move the troops onto the main effort and the drive on Rome. And the Hungarians are sending an expeditionary force to help us out,
Bereit.
which is very nice of them.
Ihre Befehle. Ihre Befehle. Ausrücken.
I need to do a better job of training my troops, but
Ihre Befehle.
doesn't particularly matter right now. I want to use you guys.
Ausrücken.
break through to Trieste. Or Trieste. Hopefully, that's the idea.
Befehle! Ausrücken!
Do you explicitly assign them Trieste? Then, once we break through this line, I'm gonna see if we can dash down the coast. Could use a Panzer army though for that. Are we done here?
Bereit!
Okay, so we've driven this entire army into this pocket. So they're gonna start surrendering en masse. En masse.
Bereit zum Ausrücken!
We got another expeditionary army from... Who was that? Bulgaria? Or was that... I didn't see, maybe that was Romania. Yeah, it's Romania. So we're going to add them to the general. We're not going to assign them to the rest of the army. We're going to, while the rest of the army is engaged, we're going to have them
Ausrücken!
make a dash for Rome. Hopefully break through the line with the other side, with the group I have coming down this side of Italy. The Romanians should go down kind of the middle, straight from Rome. And we should have Rome capitulated pretty quick here. Just a matter of breaking through once. Because once they break through, they're not going to be able to reform a line anywhere. Because they're defending here. They're not going to be able to fall back and defend on a narrower front. Hopefully. That would be unfortunate if they do that. I think it's especially interesting to just focus on this now. Alright. Oh, looks like we got a breakthrough up here about to happen.
Los, ausrücken! Achtung!
So we're gonna abandon this plan and instead break through here. Possibly.
Ziel anvisiert.
Break through. There we go. Keep the pressure. Keep the pressure.
Unter Beschuss!
Push. That's a rager. Let's make sure we got all our... maybe not.
Ihre Befehle?
More general advance is going to be what we need down here, I think. I was hoping to just break them real quick, but they keep reinforcing. Flexibility. Bad idea. No, definitely not doing that. So Greece is now... Okay, so Italy just pushed Greece into my faction. Since they declared... Why did they do that? Thank you? What up, Greece? "14 destroyers in that one air attack. Yeah, Italy is just done.
Angetreten.
Finish off their pocket here in Albania before the Greeks take it. Let's break our girl out. Okay. We're gonna start integrating heavy tanks into our existing panzer divisions, as opposed to creating just brand new full heavy divisions. So I do have a pretty significant light tank force that I've kind of been building since 36. So we need a logistics company. That's fine. That's all we'll do. Heavy tank, logistics, signal. That's a pretty good division there. I need a lot more heavy tanks if I'm going to do that. And light tanks. Let's do this. So we'll soak up our light tanks and that'll free up a bunch of trucks. There. See how that works. I think that's a mistake. Because now I just have almost no cavalry. Or motorized infantry. So we'll do this. Heavy and fast. Still frees up some trucks. Just need to build 7,000 panzers real quick, no big deal. Alright, let's think about our production for a minute. Gotta ease off on our fighter production, our aircraft production in general. Let's focus more on our ground game here than our air game. considering how easily we just rolled Italy's Air Force. And the Air Force is more easy to reconstitute than the ground force is. I really need to get my Panzer forces up to a Soviet competitive level here. They're currently not. I mean, I could defend against the Soviet Union pretty much indefinitely, but if we get in a war, I really want to take the Caucasus. Hence Panzers.
Ihre Befehle? Zuhören!
Okay, well, the quick strike didn't work, so we're going to settle in here. And we're going to assign that army to break through.
Bereit!
And we're going to use
Achtung!
the foreign forces to replace some of our losses,
Bereit zum Ausrücken!
instead of using them as independent
Befehle!
striking forces.
Bereit zum Ausrücken! Achtung!
Kesselring should go to the border with France, just in case they decide to do something dumb. Because theoretically, France should jump in on Italy's side at this point. Unless France really thinks that I'm their friend. Or potential friend.
Bereit!
Never been allies with Greeks before. Garrets do have priority. Need to do a different garrison division though. This is gonna be our, for the moment at least, garrison unit type. Gotta free up some of the more high-end supplies, anti-tank stuff, which I don't think. I mean, I don't have any resistance movements worth anything right now, so I don't need anything more than just police forces really to deal with them. So we're gonna move our heavy equipment to where it needs to be, which is the Italian front. I've, of course, heavily modified this and given them every tool they need for success, so... And this is all they have to deal with. Pretty nothing resistance. So that should change our situation pretty significantly. I still need to... I need to build some more military capacity, really.
Bereit zum Ausrücken!
Okay. That's okay, because the Allies are not my enemy. That was almost a problem, but I forgot. We're not enemies. See? how much of a chill guy I am. I mean, really. Okay, so now the fighting has shifted to the Alpine areas, out of the Balkans. So we're going to reorient. Actually, let's... There we are. Well, that would get the Allies mad. It's tempting, though. Surface... Whoa, I really have gone through my manpower, haven't I? Whoops-a-daisy. That's alright. That's to solve a number of problems. They're holding out pretty well. I wish I had some airborne forces, but I wasn't. I just didn't build any. Because right now that would be very useful. I guess I could do a naval landing, couldn't I?
Bereit zum Ausrücken. Ausrücken. Zuhören.
Since we have control. Or actually, let's do this.
Ausrücken.
Right across, and to support. Alright, donuts. Romania. Good. Basically, the people that were more loyal to me than the king was are now in control of Romania.
Befehle?
Thought you flipped the script there. I was hoping just to make a nice little dash at Rome, but not to be. So this war is actually going pretty poorly. I'm going to win, but I'm not going to win in the manner that I'd hoped. That's right. Let's get our diplomacy on point. I'd like to get Poland into a formal alliance. Good job, Japan. We're not allied, but still.
Ihre Befehle? Angetreten?
Winter War. Yeah, I should have just, once I took the coast, I should have just prepared for a broad naval invasion, but I had a pretty good shot at breaking through there. They just held too well.
Angetreten!
Let's concentrate. Reducing this pocket.
Ihre Befehle!
The last bit of the Balkans just pushes them out.
Bereit!
We'll have the rest of the front. Be cautious. Not use much. Just hold the line. We'll focus everything we have here. So here's the air warfare going on in the Western Balkans. I'm focusing on ground attack and then clearing the skies. Because the whole point of the Air Force is ground attack. I mean, yeah, mostly. Scouting and stuff too, but I've been badly neglecting my doctrine.
Achtung!
And how are they resisting this?
Ausrücken! Ihre Befehle?
More manual. disentangle.
Bereit zum Ausrücken.
Plan a different campaign.
Befehle.
I should have given up on my little blitzkrieg there a lot earlier. I'd have to say we're still, Italy's in a horrible position, but I've wasted a huge amount of manpower that I didn't need to waste. It's very unfortunate. So we'll have to go ahead and be a little bit more aggressive with our recruitment.
Achtung.
Okay, so we're going to make a movement to this river. Not sure what river that is. Probably should, but I don't.
Zuhören.
And on the other side of the Alps, take the air base and threaten Milan. You know, actually, I take that back.
Achtung. Bereit zum Ausrücken.
There we go. Ooh, that's interesting, because I'm not actually aligned with Poland. Are they guaranteed? They are guaranteed. The Soviet Union and the United Kingdom are about to be enemies, assuming the UK treats the Soviet Union like they treated Germany. Looking directly into the camera. Let's find out if that happens. It did happen, okay. The true enemy. So hopefully that'll bring, hopefully the UK then brings France in and France's allies. And then I'll bring my boys. Alright. This is why you play nice. Until you don't. Still have to finish off Italy though. Let's start working on some... Okay. So everyone's moved. So begin executing this plan.
Achtung.
It should be more effective, hopefully. Organize things a little bit better across the front. I had a lot of overlapping commands before. There we go. I guess I should have pressed that button a while ago, huh? Come on, Turkey. Because they're not aligned, right? Yeah. Yeah? Oh, okay. Thanks, buddies. Anybody else? If I could get Lend-Lease from the United States. No way. so how about enemy of my enemy? Okay. Interesting. Didn't know this existed. I don't actually need fuel, do I? Built enough. So what is it? If they have an excess and I have a deficit and we're in the same faction, they're just gonna say yes, right? More or less. Wish I knew about this earlier. Give me stuff. Whoa! Oh, that's helpful. I still have a massive deficit across the board, though. We're going to... what are we going to do? Yeah, there's some more factories. Gonna prioritize our factory building now.
Bereit zum Ausrücken.
I don't think I'm reading this right.
Zuhören.
I did the very bad job with the Italian campaign. I did okay tactically early on, but as far as the strategic management of this front, I've just been bleeding myself dry. That's okay though. Another 300 close air support aircraft. So we'll just settle in and bomb them for a while, more or less,
Befehle.
instead of a offensive. Man, because I outnumber them so badly, but I just cannot break through this line. Let's see if this helps. Where'd my navy go? I distinctly... I distinctly remember sending my navy into the Adriatic. Interesting. I wonder what the deal is, because I definitely had sent it in there.
Zuhören.
Now, can I?
Achtung.
So I have sea supremacy. Which I've had sea supremacy. But since I was enforcing it by air, I don't think the game recognized it. I've had control of the Adriatic this entire time. So I've sunk their navy, more or less.
Angetreten.
There we go. Alright.
Angetreten.
That we're gonna spearhead Rome,
Angetreten.
and we're going to pin
Bereit zum Ausrücken.
the defensive armies in the north with an offensive. Get him, boys.
Angetreten.
Let's provide some air cover. Here we go.
Angetreten. Zuhören. Ihre Befehle.
You to Rome. You to Naples.
Ihre Befehle.
Ancona. There we go. Now that is a serious problem that Italy has to deal with.
Ihre Befehle. Ausrücken.
Ooh, now we have a battle with the Italian fleet, looks like. So we just sunk a heavy cruiser. Couple more submarines. We haven't really had any significant losses as far as the Adriatic Sea goes.
Befehle. Los, los, los! Los, los, los!
So they've had to pull a bunch of forces off the line.
Auf geht's!
Actually take that port.
Los,
Let's
ausrücken!
think about this.
Vorwärts, Männer!
Back to Toronto.
Ausrücken!
I need to fight out of this little
Ausrücken! Greift weiter an! Los, los, los!
I need a port, or else those guys are gonna have a
Ausrücken!
slight problem.
Zurück!
Or if they're gonna
Zieht uns
withdraw,
zurück! Los, los, los!
like Rome's still open to me if I can get there quick enough. Not quite. That's alright. I'm beginning to regret this invasion of Italy.
Bereit zum Ausrücken! Bereit! Abstand halten!
Uh-oh.
Suchen Deckung!
Another cruiser and a couple destroyers. I mean, eventually.
Vorwärts, Männer! Bereit! Achtung!
Alright, we're gonna have to settle in here a little bit.
Angetreten!
Well, I don't want to offer peace, I want to sue for peace and just take my gains.
Bereit zum Ausrücken! Bereit!
So how is everyone still green if everyone's been... Or are they just being mowed down? Is that what's happening? Should probably pay more attention to how that system works, because clearly I've done something very wrong here.
Befehle! Befehle?
Yeah, I think we need to chill for a second. Is what we need to do.
Zuhören!
And reorient. So we're gonna go on the strategic defensive for a moment. I mean, we have all our gains down here, so it's not like we're giving that up. But I just can't push into Italy for some reason. So we're gonna stop trying to push. We're gonna build up. But we're gonna probably do a more serious naval invasion or something. Because this region is just not... I just can't break in. It's great defensive ground. Okay. I think what we're gonna do is we're gonna start.
Bereit. Achtung.
Just a general training program, get people up to where they should be. I don't know why literally everyone is green.
Bereit zum Ausrücken. Achtung.
I mean, there's like a couple regulars and everyone else is.
Befehle.
So I guess they're just being mowed down in the Alps. Sorry guys.
Zuhören. Angetreten.
Yeah, I put myself in a bad position here.
Ihre Befehle.
Much like
Achtung.
IRL.
Ihre Befehle. Bereit zum Ausrücken. Bereit
So
zum
we're going to change up our tactics here. We're going to
Angetreten.
concentrate our tanks, create a Panzer army.
Befehle.
We're going to use that to break through this, and possibly the Soviet Union too.
Zuhören.
Panzers aren't great for Italy, but
Befehle.
should be able to break through.
Angetreten.
Because they had one breakthrough. That's all I really need.
Angetreten. Achtung. Bereit. Bereit. Angetreten. Ihre Befehle.
Because I think what's happening is I have a ton of theoretical Panzer divisions that don't have tanks in them.
Angetreten.
I think that's what's going on.
Ihre Befehle. Ausrücken. 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 Ausrücken.
Not sure exactly how that works.
Ausrücken. Los, ausrücken. Bereit zum Ihre Befehle.
Oops.
Ihre Befehle. Bereit. Bereit zum Ausrücken. Achtung.
We're going to distribute a couple of these divisions.
Achtung. Zuhören.
Across the lines. Keep the
Befehle.
rest concentrated.
Zuhören.
We're going to concentrate
Befehle! Befehle! Bereit zum Ausrücken!
Let's try that.
Bereit!
Let's get you trained up too. Just thinking about your little dash here. I'm not very good at this game, if you can't tell. I'm good at the early diplomacy and stuff, but I just lost maybe 2 million men trying to take Italy here.
Befehle!
Which is not what you want. So the Soviet Union has taken all of Poland. But they are at war with the United Kingdom's sphere of influence. But not yet with... Oh, they are fighting against France. We're all fighting against... So then if I join the war against Soviet Union, France and the UK can use my territory to attack. Okay, so we're gonna build up a little bit, and hopefully the Soviets will be the aggressors against me. Then all I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna hold, wait for reinforcements, and then we're gonna on to Moscow. Our Air Force is getting a lot of experience. Alright, that's the Heavy Tiger. King Tiger, that's right, King Tiger. Oh, did I never switch equipment? Oh my goodness. That's silly.
Angetreten!
Okay, so our manpower is not quite as bad as it was. Still not good though. Let's go beg for some stuff. Thank you. Thank you, Greeks. I'm glad we didn't have a war. It's everybody, right? Spitfires. I just got some Spitfires.
Befehle?
Should have switched that. I don't think so. Cruise on. Yeah, no thanks. Good luck, boys. Actually, if I end up fighting the Soviets,
Angetreten?
wouldn't be a bad idea to be friends with the Chinese, huh? Not that they're in a position to do much. But I don't want to be friends with Japan because I don't feel like antagonizing the United States. That tends to be a bad idea. Ugh.
Bereit.
All right.
Befehle? Befehle!
Really just not sure what the answer is here.
Bereit zum Ausrücken.
Guess we're getting close. Yeah,
Bereit.
stick with the plan.
Achtung!
Yeah, I really screwed up that campaign. It started well, but I just really wasn't paying attention to the loss rate, which was staggering. So I just got into a war of attrition. Which was not the plan. There's always a possibility, though.
Achtung!
As opposed to
Bereit zum Ausrücken.
line. But actually, we're just gonna let it there, and then middle of no goddamn where, and then so they shouldn't be defended at all. There we go. Huh? Hold on, what? What is going on?
Ihre Befehle? Bereit zum Ausrücken. Zuhören.
I don't want to risk pulling them off the line with the Soviet Union, though. Alright, fine. Enjoy your weird little counteroffensive.
Vorwärts, Männer! Zuhören! Bereit zum Ausrücken. Achtung! Angetreten. Zuhören. Bereit zum Ausrücken. Ihre Befehle?
Italians are on an offensive. They're just gonna do to themselves what... Oh, you know what I should do? I should just withdraw. Then let them overextend.
Achtung! Ihre Befehle?
We're just gonna defend, and we're gonna let them punch themselves out.
Bereit zum Ausrücken.
Then we're gonna land the entire Panzer army on the coast of Italy. Yeah, it looks like that's stabilizing now. It's a weird offensive for them to do. cruiser. So they've actually taken a good bit of Austria, right? We're almost to Vienna. This is not going well. But as long as I have control of the Adriatic, we should be okay. Just waiting on the invasion. Because by the time their offensive is out, they've run out of steam, then they're going to have to deal with an entire Panzer army. I don't think they're going to have the ability to do that. But I've been wrong about everything else about this war so far, so we'll see.
Ihre Befehle?
At least my troops are gaining experience. And they're bending, not breaking. We're losing space, but we're trading space for time and death and everything else. Yeah, because they just fought their way through the mountains. I'm not sure what their casualty rate is, but it has to be pretty crazy. Should be about ready, right?
Angetreten.
2 weeks. I'm concerned about this corridor here. The Vienna corridor. Because if they pinch that off, then I am out of contact with my allies and my possessions down here. Okay, it's about that time.
Bereit zum Ausrücken.
Embark now upon the Great Crusade, which we've been preparing for these many months.
Befehle. Bereit. Achtung.
Not sure what that does.
Bereit zum Ausrücken. Bereit. Zeigt es ihnen!
Whoa.
Los, los, los!
I want a port move. How do you do a port
Greift
move?
weiter an! Bereit! Ausrücken! Greift weiter an!
There, we'll do that.
Ausrücken!
Oh boy, this is not going well. I think I just lost all that entire information for us. Okay, well clearly I don't understand something here.
Ihre Befehle! Achtung! Vorwärts, Männer!
Beautiful. Good job, Hungry. Very proud of you.
Angetreten!
Also proud of you, Italy. Unless I'm doing something dumb, you're doing something very smart. I'm not sure what it is. My naval invasions have not been what I've hoped they would be. I'm just not sure what the mechanics are here that I'm getting wrong. Am I supposed to be invading into a port? Because it looks like they're just dumping off the tanks on the beach and pissing off back home. It's like they're not being resupplied at all. But I mean, I get that you need... I guess they're not taking mulberry bases with them like the Allies did, huh? We'll just build some nukes.
Weiter! Weiter! Greift weiter an! Bereit!
Yeah, that didn't work, so we're gonna
Befehle?
put those back in the general population.
Bereit! Achtung!
Alright. Pushing the dumb Italians back, finally. think in retrospect I should have used light infantry if I was going to be fighting Italy. But my entire strategy was geared towards the Soviet Union, so this was just kind of an audible call that didn't go so well.
Ihre Befehle? Ihre Befehle? Angetreten! Angetreten! Achtung! Befehle!
Stupid Italians. I can't believe they got all the way to Vienna. I mean, they never took Vienna, but still impressive.
Achtung!
This is why you never underestimate your enemy. Whoa! The Americans invaded Tokyo in 1942. How did they do that? Oh, dude! They didn't even get a chance to nuke them. What? Okay. You did what? Yeah, I don't, Adios, Bulgarians.
Bereit zum Ausdruck.
Stab in the back incoming. Whoa, what? Things just got real complicated real quick. So Bulgarians are now part of the Soviet Union's sphere of influence. Which is fine. So... and they're at war with every goddamn buddy. I need to get out of this war with Italy before I end up dragged in on... Just kidding, guys? Here's where we should be able to sue for peace and figure something out, but... or this is why negotiated pieces were invented. This situation right here. Oh well. At least the Soviet Union's not going to attack, I don't think, since they have so much else going on. That'd be foolish to add me to their list of enemies. Turkish are the allies. Fine. I'd like to be associated with the allies in some way.
Befehle?
The what? What did you do? I'm flabbergasted, folks. Okay, now it makes sense for me to join forces with the Soviet Union, and I refuse to do that. What is happening in the Balkans right now? They just completely turned the world upside down. Why am I at war with... So now we've got a German-Soviet alliance against... Ugh. Well, we're gonna win. That's boring. I'm disgusted with Romania, and I'm rage quitting because of what they've done to make the game boring. I'm not gonna fight with the Soviet Union. Like, but with, I mean, alongside. That's not why we play this game. That would be so stupid. Yeah, that's just a steamroller. Alright, well, we're gonna... I call that a stream, I think. Yeah. Well, that's the bad future in that game. That's the bad future. The German Soviet domination of the world. I'm sure that would have been a great thing to live through. Oofa. I'll see you folks later.